Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're watching us, and I'd like to welcome you now to our program, The Tower at UNN. Today we're going to be talking about labor unions and cooperatives, and we would like to welcome you to this space of sharing, enriching ourselves, learning, and also being teachers. But without further ado, we will do what we usually do, as become tradition on these shows. We will first listen to the national anthem, and after listening to the national anthem, my co-host is in the back of the studio. Senior Chintu will be here with us to greet us, and then after that, we will listen to a state anthem, and from there, we shall commence our show. So, without further ado, we will listen to the national anthem.
O Uganda, may God uphold thee. We lay our future in thy hand. United, free for liberty, together we'll always stand. Oh, Uganda, the land of freedom, our love and labor we give, and we've neighbors all at our country's calling, peace and friendship will we.
Welcome back from the national anthem. I'd like to call upon Senior Chintu to come and also bid his greetings to our audience members who are watching us or listening to us via our radio network.
Thank you, Desire. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special program today on this special day, which marks 60 years since Uganda became an independent nation, the independence which has been robbed of us, that we don't own anymore. It is for that reason I know many of you are in a very somber mood, because there is virtually no reason to be jubilant and celebrate when our country is under occupation by alien invaders. Nevertheless, that can pass. We can still say, yes, one day we shall regain our promised land, as the Jewish captives used to sing across the river when they were in Lebanon, not Lebanon, was it Jordan? In a Gentile, they were looking forward to returning home. We are also looking forward to regaining our independence. It reminds me of the songs of a famous Polish composer, Chopin. Those who listen to classical music will remember the man always had melancholic compositions because he was in exile, as we are today. So let us not lose heart. Let us hold our faith, our hearts together, and work together for the liberation of our country, so that one day we can sit in Kampala, Gulu, Jinja, Hoima, Kabale, Masaka, and of course Kyotera as well. And they say, Allah Akbar, God is great. Hallelujah, hallelujah. We shall regain our country. Welcome to this show. We are going to deal with some very important issues, because redeeming our country from these invaders requires a lot of work. It's not going to be a time for dancing and singing. It is going to be a time of work. That's why we are going to discuss the issues to do with labor unions and the cooperatives organizations. Pay attention, listen, learn something, and say, one day, as in Luganda we say, we kataligirya eribika. Welcome to our show. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senior, for that. As today is a memorable day within our history, young as the nation is, the day that we attained independence, although right now we might not have the promised independence and freedoms, but it's a day that not only our ancestors but also our elders looked forward to and actually also fought for. So we at least in our hearts hold and celebrate that, and that drives us to know that we again, the descendants, can do it again and gain our freedom back, because it's been done before by our ancestors. But before we go any further, we will listen to the state anthem of Busoga. Welcome back from the Busoga State Anthem. And with that being said, and we have seen the beauty and everything that is a part of Busoga, we are going to move into our show. But before we actually start with our show, We will start with a few videos that the producer is going to show in Luganda, as we say, Chigula Luji, or just maybe, I don't know the direct translation in English, but I would say a catalytic component before we actually enter today's show. So I'm gonna ask the producer to please play those video clips, and then I'll have Senior Chintu will come, and then we will discuss the video clips before going into the actual show itself. But as we wait to go into those clips, for today's show, as I said before, we're going to be talking about economic empowerment, and we have Senior Chintu here today to be exploring cooperatives and labor unions as well, how these two forms of organizing a people's economic power can be resourceful to the community and to the people, and also help build the economy whilst doing the safeguarding and safekeeping of people's interest in their economic for their economic growth. So now I have Senior Chintu here with me. While we wait for those video clips to come up, I think we will go ahead and start a little bit on today's show. So, Senior Chintu, before we go any further, I would like for you to define, at least people, before we explore this topic, what economic empowerment means or what it stands for in regards to today's topic.
Thank you. That's a very loaded question. People should know that a nation is made of individual people. And it is the individual people, as we say, Uganda has over 40 million people. These are individuals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 40 plus million people. Those people's well-being, welfare, economic status, social status, spiritual status, you name it, that's what makes a nation. So if you are really a believer in a democratic, sovereign nation, you cannot ignore the power of individual people who make up society. And when you look at labor unions and the cooperatives, these are not institutions composed of some miraculous people in the government. No, it is individual people starting with the family, in the villages, in the factories, in all kinds of employment societies or communities that will either form a labor union or a cooperative. Individual producers, individual consumers, individual savers will form what you would call a cooperative. And it sets a foundation in simple but practical democratic values. It combats and eradicates individualism because, as you know, right now Ugandans are too much into individualism because they do not trust each other. On the other hand, they do not have any reason to trust each other or to say that I need you in order to be what I am. When you bring people together to look out for their economic, social, cultural, and political well-being, then they are going to know that I am not an island as an individual. I am part of the community. The social consciousness of belonging to this community becomes a very, very effective and a driving force in nation building. That's why we really chose that with these two factors, labor unions and the cooperatives. You see, Uganda is predominantly an agricultural country, and Uganda, all the people in Uganda are consumers and the producers of something. Either they produce what they grow or they produce their labor, and they consume the services of other people or they consume products of other people. So interrelationship between people is a silent but a powerful force in the overall constellation of building a nation. We are here working hard to make sure that when Uganda is liberated, it is going to be a democratic nation based on a federal system of governance whereby the people are in charge of their nation, not the invaders or the top government officials. No, it is the individuals from the bottom up, not from the top down. You've heard of so many cases whereby they said, oh, the government has promised to do this for our community or our society or our county. But you ask yourself, where does that mysterious thing called government come from? Right now, it is obvious. It is Museveni. Museveni has given our people so much money. Museveni has donated this kind of money to build a mosque in Kasese. Museveni has donated so much money to prepare the celebration of beatification of some soon to be a saint in Guru. Museveni has given me money to do this. Museveni has given me this. Museveni has... No, that's not the way to build a nation. The nation should be built from the bottom. It is the people who should be doing things that they want to do, which they think are going to benefit them, given what they have. It is no point building castles in the air, thinking that you are going to be a billionaire when you've seen people talking about spending 20 million, 80 million shillings for a wedding. You ask them, how much do you have? They will end up going to Museveni and get the difference so that they can have glamorous, what I would call conspicuous consumption. That is the stupidest way to think of how to run your own life. So cooperatives, labor unions are the foundation of a democratic, sovereign, federal nation.
So, Senior, I apologize because I'm going to make us go like a few steps back into where we were supposed to start. So, for our viewers, and a disclaimer, we're not able to show the videos that we intended to show today because most of those videos have triggering imagery and gushing out of blood from some of the people who were involved in the video. So, according to the streaming rules, we're not allowed to show those videos, but I'll give a small synopsis on them. The videos that we wanted to bring to you today was a video that was taken of alleged thieves who were captured off of the Entebbe Express Highway, and they were beaten by a mob for carrying out robbery during daylight and doing it on and off. But before they were beaten, they were stripped naked and then also whipped after that. And we wanted to look at that scenario and really examine the logic behind that. And for reasons intending to that, I'll call upon Senior Chintu to take that topic on further.
Thank you very much. That was intended to be the Chigularuji, the introito, as we call it in the language of music. Yes, these videos have been circulating on social media uh, for the last couple of days, and I'm sure many of you people have seen them. The mob has been fed up with these robbers on the northern bypass, uh, hiding in there, waiting for people to come in their cars, intercept them by throwing stones at them and robbing them. Now, what is interesting about this is the zero tolerance our people have with respect to robbers and thieves. I certainly share that same value. I too have zero tolerance for robbers and thieves. My question is this: if, in fact, you people in Kampala or in Uganda, for that matter, have zero tolerance to thieves and robbers, and you had the audacity to come as a group, they call it a gang, that's kind of derogatory, but I think it was a group of citizens who said, we are fed up. Okay, it's fine, you were fed up. You took maximum punishment to those who were caught in the act. Yes, that's okay. If someone is mad at you, then you can go for confession tomorrow. However, you did a good job. My question is, if you are fed up with the thieves and the robbers, and you were able to gang together and take action against these robbers on the northern bypass, how come you are not taking the same action about the robbers who are robbing you day in and day out? They are robbing you of all the money in the government. They are robbing you of your land. They are robbing you of your lives. And you turn around and you call those robbers honorables and their excellencies. And you give them respectable positions at any function with chairs well polished, and praise them for being such a wonderful thieves of the country. That's where I do not understand where your priorities are. Because that gang action which you took on Northern Bypass could be taken effectively on robbers of your land, robbers of your freedom, robbers of your national wealth, who are now parading themselves as the most affluent people in the country. They are just as human beings with rotten minds as those you beat at the Northern Bypass. I am questioning, why don't you insert the same zero tolerance on those robbers and thieves as you did on these ones at the Northern Bypass? That's a question to you Ugandans in Uganda. I don't understand why you don't.
Thank you so much, Senior Chintu, because that is that is that is a very potent contradiction in our actions and in theory what our values are. Because the disrespect that these so-called purported leaders rob off the nation, they do it also in broad daylight. They too do it in broad daylight. They do it openly, and they do it with, I don't know the word in English, but okusomoza per se. So I will leave that question to every Ugandan as well who's watching us or listening to us so that we can align our priorities. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead, Senior, into today's program. And had mentioned before, and I mentioned a lot of valuable things whereby we all either consume from other people's labor or we put our labor into the nation. and it's from the bottom up that we can be able to build a nation. But in order to get into today's program, we're going to start with then the challenge of building a nation. And this is a challenge that still, it's a question that's still a challenge to, if not all, but most African countries or people or nations, the challenge of building a nation. So here it states that Uganda is a country of over 40 million people with diverse cultures, languages, religions, political affiliations, customs, and traditions. Yet they all share the same imposed poverty and economic exploitation. They are all politically disenfranchised by a ruthless and lethal cabal of aliens, which is composed of blacks and non-blacks. The cabal has been successful in its evil schemes because of a unitary form of governance. In that system, all the powers and decision making for the country is controlled by a handful of people on the top. Expecting to develop a nation through a unitary system is like an insect climbing on a leg of an elephant in anticipation of raping it. The federal system of governance, on the other hand, empowers people in different regions of the country who share similar values, languages, cultures, and customs to collectively manage themselves and determine their destiny as they see fit. In the case of Uganda, the federal system is as natural as different types of plants. The challenge of building a nation involves economic, political, social, cultural, and spiritual growth of the people in the country, starting with the individual unit of the society, the family, and rise up to the level of the nation. So here, Senior, what's laid out is the challenges that Uganda does have. And the biggest challenge, of course, that we have talked about extensively is this challenge of us not only being in a unitary system, but being in a unitary system with foreign leaders in charge of not only the country but in charge of who actually enters parliament and how our natural resources are used and disposed of and how the country's economic growth trajects. So we have talked about that extensively. So I therefore would like to ask you to explain to our audience members with a mix of that why it is important, because even in the introduction you talked about that we must start from the bottom up and really kill not on and kill away the individualistic, but also how starting from the bottom up supports this fabric that will promote social, political, culture, and economic growth. How does that better promote that growth of those four components that are so important to nation building versus top to bottom?
Well, thank you very much. That's a good question. I think that statement has explained a little bit. When we talk about starting from the bottom, we are
Mm,
recognizing and putting value in the primary
mm,
unit of society, which is family or individual human beings. That is
mm,
bringing Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Susan, and whatever together as human beings, as citizens of Uganda, and recognize their predicament and what is their common problem in which they all share, in spite of their differences as
mm,
individuals in the nation. Now, we have to accept the fact that a unitary form of government does not give
mm,
us potential room for correction of national or community problems. The last time I spoke about this, I told people that we have different foods. We have matoke, we have cassava, we have uh, gonja, we have potatoes, we have millet. You cannot cook them in one pot and bring it, in Uganda we call it omuwumbo, and
mm,
think that you eat it. In fact, each one of those items I'm talking about is real good food and can be enjoyed. But you are not going to squeeze matoke and then suju and the potato and the cassava and the millet all in one bundle. That's what the unitary government has done to us. And we have failed miserably for the last 60 years to develop a nation because we got to split them. We have to have matoke by itself, cassava by itself, potatoes by themselves, you name it. Now, when you recognize that people have suffering under what I call imposed poverty, the Uganda poverty is imposed, let's admit it, because the people have the capacity to lift themselves out of poverty, but they cannot because this unitary government, which is controlled by aliens, by that I mean the rulers of Uganda are not Ugandans, and they have brought in their comrades, uh, and they have formed a very lethal cabal of Rwandese, Chinese, Indians, and the Muzungu, all eating what belongs to Ugandans. And the Ugandans have come out completely empty-handed. Let's look at the fish out of Lake Victoria. When I was growing up, which is 100 years ago, we were very comfortable and enjoying the fish from Lake Victoria. We had a ningu, obujunguli, kasurubana, we had semutundu, we had the tilapia, of course, enkeje, mukene, you name it. Now, can you get all those? Can you get kasurubana? Can you get a ningu? Can you get all these other different types of fish? Even the tilapia, which is very common in Lake Victoria, it is being shipped to China by Chinese. And who has facilitated them to do that? This alien dominated regime that we have, because they don't care about the Ugandans. They don't. So those are the problems we have when I'm talking about imposed poverty. We had people who were making a good living out of fishing and selling those fish. We had many people who were rich. I know where I come from in Masaka. I know of many farmers who were even able to buy motorcycles and cars by growing coffee. Can they do it now? No, because they cannot market their own coffee at a price which they determine and they become affluent. The coffee is being robbed of them by some aliens on top who are working under the guise of government. You saw recently when they brought that woman who claims to be Italian, that she's going to be in charge of marketing all Uganda coffee. Where in the hell did she come from? And what justifies that woman to come and be the dominant force which will market Uganda's coffee? When we had the cooperative unions, they had a say in how Uganda coffee should be marketed. It's no longer there. The unions were destroyed. Uganda is a big grower of cotton. At one time, we used to process 60% of our cotton and sell 40% overseas. And we had Nitil in Jinja, we had the leader spinning mills. They were handling 60%, where by now, 60 years after independence, we would be looking forward to processing 100% of our cotton production. That means people would be buying clothes, cotton clothes, bed sheets, shirts, underwears, you name it, towels made out of cotton grown in Uganda. And who would be benefiting? The farmers and the local traders. But now, 100% of our cotton is exported. And the farmers of cotton do not even have a say in how much they should earn out of their sweat. So they are kept as poor producers of cotton, while some other people are becoming very rich processor and exporter of Uganda cotton. So we can go on in so many areas. We used to have uh, factories processing our hides, and we eat a lot of meat from cows, goats, sheep, you name it. And we had tanneries processing those hides or leather in order to make, which are used to make leather products like shoes, handbags, you name it. We could probably have advanced in making very, very fine leather products like you see made in Italy. But now all those tanneries were destroyed, and the cow hides coming off all the cows that we kill in Uganda are being taken over by Chinese. They monopolize that. We don't have a say in it. And in the end, we cannot even make uh, shoes out of the leather that comes out of our animals in Uganda. That's why you see many people are walking around on sapatu or some plastic shoes coming in from China, which are totally nuisance. You cannot even wear those plastic shoes going to a big wedding or a church on Christmas. So we have to look at all these things which are coming out of primary production, because as I said, everybody is a consumer of something, and everybody is a producer of something. Either you produce an item which is consumed by someone else, or you sell your labor. So the laborers, in spite of the fact that we have a very, very large unemployment percentage in the country, however, we still have some people who are selling their labor: the teachers, the nurses, the doctors, the government clerks, you name it. Those people's wages are not commensurate with the quality of living that they should be enjoying. We have to look into that. And that's why we are going to encourage labor unions being formed by everybody who sells his labor, whether it is manual labor, professional labor. There should be some organization. And democracy cannot survive without strong labor unions, strong cooperative unions, which are independent of government domination.
Then, Senior Chintu, this brings me to a question on just what you were saying right now. Because in Uganda, although our unemployment rate is high, most of our labor is not organized labor. For example, someone says, "Anze just ngenze mu kibuga, I've gone downtown and I expect to make like some money today." All people who go to construction sites and they make whatever they make by carrying around, by doing labor work, hard labor work. So I think this was sparked by when you did talk about like the ones whereby they're already hired and are institutionalized as service givers, but we do have a lot of our population of people who sell their labor but are not even protected by the laws to sell labor. How would that be reconciled?
Well, the so-called laborers, as you've mentioned, those who come to the town and they look for some manual work, you can see that even they themselves have a very low opinion of what they are doing, because in actual fact, it is no way a person can earn a living doing that kind of work. And by maintaining that kind of work as individual contributors, without working as a united team of workers,
Mm,
you are promoting being left way out below the filter carpet. You are way down below, and you will never be recognized. You will never get anywhere by being below the level of recognition. The businesses we are getting in may be organized businesses, but because we have such a very high unemployment, the employer does not give a damn. Because if you don't want to do the job I want you to do for $1 a month, I will find someone else. There are so many people who are desperate that they will take anything. If we organize these workers into labor unions, there will be definite standards that nobody is going to work for $1 a month. Nobody. Now, that is where a government of the people, not a government of foreigners, comes in. The government is going to be looking out for your back. And they say, nobody is going to employ a person and they pay him $1 a month. Nobody is going to employ a person who is below let's say, who is below the age of 12. But now you can have child labor working because there is no law, there is no rule
There's no
that
laws governing that.
there are no laws which the employer has to abide with. That is our federal government, and most importantly, a government which is manned by Ugandans who care about Uganda. But these aliens, they don't care about Uganda. That's why you find even kids who are 9 years old, they are working for some, peanuts when they should be in school to develop their, intellectual capacity. But there is an interrelationship between a government that cares about people and organizing the labor unions, whereby the government sets laws which must be enforced. Because even if now these people tried to scream, they have nowhere to go. There is no government to go. There is no justice department to go to, because all the lawyers, I mean, not lawyers, but all the judges are Museveni's judges. They have to make a judgment based on what Museveni wants them to say. Otherwise, they are out of business. So you can see how important a federal system is, because the federal government is going to be in the hands of the citizens. It is the people in that state and those states coming together and they form a united Federal Republic of Uganda. And they will put the right and which organizers of labor unions have to follow. But the government does not manage the labor unions. It is the individual members who manage the labor unions.
And then we will go ahead. I don't want to. We will go ahead to the next slide, and I'll save my question for when we actually now enter this topic of labor unions and cooperatives. So on the next slide, Senior, it says cooperatives and labor unions contain a natural relevance to the idea of nation building. They are founded on empowering people to take charge of their economic and social lives. They mobilize and utilize people's brain power to deal with common problems of society. Producers of the same agricultural item, for example, coffee, cotton, tobacco, fishermen, can organize themselves and form a cooperative to market their products and obtain optimum returns from their labor. Financial savings are the source of capital, which is absolutely essential to economic development. Capital is to economic development as blood is to our human body. It is impossible to accumulate enough capital for investment if one relies solely on individual savings. Credit is an indispensable component in the overall scheme of economic development. Collective savings must be institutionalized through banks, credit unions, and any other form of financial institutions to fuel economic growth. So, Senior,
Yes.
in this, there is a synopsis of how cooperatives and labor unions are already embedded within the federal system of governance and helps to further fuel and channel economic development within a nation itself, as we have said earlier on from the bottom up. But then there is talk about a few things that I would like for you to highlight a bit more because you've talked about them extensively, but also show their relevance and how they now actually are showing up at the individual collective unit. Because you've talked about extensively how credit is indispensable. Any nation to develop, we need a line of credit. But in order to even have that, we do need capital, but we've been talking about them at a nation building level. But now we can put them at the level of individuals coming together within the nation to strengthen the availability not only of credit but also of capital to that nation, and how that can fuel economic growth whilst it's all embedded in this federal system of governance. How do they all intermingle together to form a nice woven sweater of sorts?
Yes, that's a very good question. When you talk about labor unions and the cooperatives having um, being an ideal starting point for building a nation, if I could
Mm,
borrow the traditional way of the people I would call honorable are the
mm,
individuals in the country because these are the foundation of society.
mm,
It's not the people on the top who should be honorable. It is the people on the bottom who should be honorable. Because, first of all, as I said, they are the foundation, they are the owners, they are the producers, they are the consumers. And
mm,
what they do is what we call gross national product. A
mm,
country is viewed to be highly developed because it has a very large GNP. Or if it is a poor country, we say, oh, their GNP is only $30 million. While a country which is very rich, it has a GNP of $30 trillion. But those
mm,
dollars are not coming out of the sky. They are the products of the labor production of Johnny, Peter, Paul, and Mary in society.
mm.
Why I call these
That's,
individuals the real
mm,
honorables. Okay?
mm,
Now, the good thing about it is when you are talking about forming labor unions or cooperatives, it is the Johnny, Peter, Paul, and Mary who
mm,
sit in their community or place of employment or their communities or county, whatever, and they say, what is our problem?
mm,
Now, people are going to tell you if I went to Karamoja today and I talk to those people in Karamoja, one of the things they are likely to tell me, we do not have enough water for our livestock.
mm,
That's what a Karamojong is going to tell me. And I hope I'm right. But if I went to Hoima and I talk to the people there in Hoima, they are going to tell me a different thing. And they are all Ugandans. But the Karamajongs are more concerned about water. The people in Hoima are going to tell me they are more concerned about they have no place to borrow money when they want to build houses or send their children to school. Now, if I go to Sebei, they are going to tell me all many parts of Uganda have electricity, but we don't have electricity in Sebei. Because I know electricity has not been supplied to Sebei area unless they did it yesterday that I don't know of. Now, each people are going to tell you what is their problem and they are going to explain to you. Now, if I went and I talked to some teachers or some nurses, are going to tell me that, our problem here as nurses, as teachers, is we have not received our salaries for the last 9 months. And I have no money to pay school fees for my children or to buy myself a shirt or to, just to survive. I have no income. So each people will tell you exactly what their problem is. And from those problems, you can say, how do we solve this problem? Now, if the producers of products like coffee or cotton growers or fishermen, they are going to say, let us form a cooperative union to be able to process our coffee, our cotton, and sell it and have a say in how much it is sold and where it is sold. Then the nurses are going to say, let us form a labor union so that our union can stand up and speak for us and demand the things that we need to improve our quality of service as nurses. We don't want to quit this job. We love it, but we are having a lot of institutional problems within the service that we are not getting our salary when it is due at the end of the month. We have very bad housing. We have no insurance when we get sick. When someone is hurt on the job, there is no compensation. These are the problems they want to solve because they affect all of them as workers, regardless of their political party affiliations or tribal background. They are nurses at Murago. Whether you are an Acholi nurse or Uganda nurse, you need your bloody salary, period, when it is due to you. Whether you are a supporter or FDC supporter, you need your bloody salary when it is due. So that is what, and then by so doing, you are going to see that these people are going to divorce this idea of individualism and they say, when I work with my brothers and sisters, we can solve a social problem. Now, you are bringing people together. They are now realizing that they are a community of people, not individuals caring for oneself, regardless of the problem we are in. All right? If you are talking about people living in an area and they say, we have no place to bank our money or to borrow when we need. Those people are going to tell, okay, let us organize a credit union which we own. We save our little money, and that money is going to accumulate over time into a gigantic pot of money whereby I can go and borrow 2,000 shillings or 10,000 shillings for whatever need I may have. And then nobody is going to look down upon me because I am black or because I am a poor man or because, any other reason, as it is now the case when you go to these exploitive foreign-owned commercial banks like Stanback and the Barclays Bank, because Barclays Bank is not going to give you a loan. If you are that little poor fellow from Matuga, they are not going to give you a loan. They only give loans to big people. And then here is another very big disadvantage. They are going to give you a loan at a very huge interest rate. I understand mortgage, if you really want to build a house in Uganda, the mortgage interest rate is 27%. and they are going to tell you, okay, we shall loan you the 30 million shillings you want at 27%, but you must pay back the loan within 5 years, maybe 7 years. Even if they make it 7 years, do you think
It's
you
still
can pay back the million with a 27% interest rate in 5 or 7 years? Hell no, you can't.
that's too much of interest. It's almost a
That is
third.
exactly when you calculate that interest. This is why, well, those banks which are foreign owned, I'm talking about Barclays Bank, Standard Bank, you
Standard.
name it, yeah, Standard Bank. What they are aiming at is they know that 80 to 90% chances you are going to default, and they
Mm.
are going to possess that real estate. How many
Mm-hmm.
times have you heard of people crying? The bank is going to take my. I think Prince Chimbugo had a program yesterday. This fat woman, who is a Museveni's woman, was in tears because the bank is going to take a house. This is exactly the trap they are in. If they had organized a credit union and she borrowed that 50 million from the credit union, chances are the interest rate is going to be 4%, not
Mm.
27%, because credit unions don't charge a big interest. Anyway, it's the members who decide which interest rate. Do you
Decide
think
even
we are
how
going to
much.
sit there as members and they say, let us screw each other at 27%? Hell no. They are going to say, we are going to charge each other an interest of, say, 4%, and we are going to give you 15 years to pay back.
Mm.
You can't deal with that kind of arrangement because, after all,
Mm.
it is the members who determine the
Mm.
terms of those loans. It's not the
Mm.
government, it's not the executive, or what do you call it, board of directors sitting in London saying that our branches in Uganda and Zimbabwe and wherever, we are going to charge those bloody Africans so much money so that they can fail and will own the property. Then we turn around and say, hey, when they do their ledger, they have real estate holdings in Uganda worth so many billions in the posh areas of Kampala and the
Mm.
Jinja and the Masaka, you name it. Credit unions are not going to do that. So when you want to start a business, where do you go? We
Go
talk
to a
about
credit.
capital. Everybody
Mm.
is talking about capital, but they don't realize capital comes from savings.
Mm.
Is the saved money. Even if you come to these Muzungu countries and borrow, you are borrowing money which these Muzungus in their countries have accumulated through savings. Now, it is through those savings that we have a source of capital. And how do we access capital? Through credit. Credit must be accessible to everybody who needs it.
Mm.
And the only way we can correct this problem is we have to own our financial institutions.
Mm.
And what are the financial institutions? It is the banks, credit
Mm.
unions, insurance companies, and savings and loan associations. All those have to
Mm.
be owned by Ugandans. The insurance companies, in particular, because they accumulate a lot of money through the daily payment of premiums by insured people. They have to invest that money somewhere. They are more useful when you are talking about huge infrastructure development projects. Not someone who wants to start a chicken farm somewhere there in Kabwoko. No, they are very good for those huge infrastructure investment projects or industries.
Mm.
We can borrow from an insurance company if we want to start a big project. For example, a big tannery. I don't know how much money you're going to need, but you can even borrow from the regular banks. But
mm,
for individuals like you and me, credit unions are the best answer,
best
because
answer, yeah.
as a member of the credit union, I cannot be denied of credit if I need it. In other words, credit is available to people based on need, not based on their political, social, economic status. No,
Mm,
it's based on need. And the interest rate is determined by the members, not
mm,
by the board of directors from somewhere. So that is how you are going to build a nation, starting from the bottom, not
mm.
from the top.
And senior, you know what I appreciate about this kind of way? It then brings in that element of, because we all know about money and gaining money, but we all have not gotten the economic, for example, the e-commerce education about about we learn about supply and demand, but we haven't learned about how things such as capital credit and how those are important to maintaining like a healthy economic lifeline, if that makes sense. But now having things like the cooperatives and the credit union, it brings down that knowledge back to the people, whereby they are cultivating it and growing it at their rate and how they understand their socio-economic problems at, from where they are actually situated, and they can learn from outside and polish up what they have, but they become masters of how they understand their economy and the growth of their economy. So it makes more sense to borrow from a credit union than to ever go to a bank in the first place. But
Yes,
then that
that's
brings,
yeah. Well, let's make this very clear. There is
mm,
no way you are going to develop an economy without
mm,
accessibility of credit.
mm,
Credit in a capitalistic society as we are in is
mm,
part and a partial of the overall economic development. People
mm,
have to be able to borrow, whether
mm,
they borrow from, depending upon what kind of business you are in. If you are going to start a business, for example, you want to start manufacturing barbed wires. I know, I have seen this. A little factory that will manufacture barbed wires is not an
mm,
expensive proposition. You can do it even in the garage of your own house. The machine that you
mm,
need to do this work is very simple. All right. However, you're going to need to buy the basic machinery. You are not going to depend upon saving your little salary as a teacher or a nurse or a taxi driver.
mm,
And but if you have come up with this idea and you have say saved, $10,000, and you need 30,000 to get started, you can borrow the 20 from a financial institution.
mm,
And the financial institution is going to give you that credit so that you can purchase the machinery and the raw materials that you need to get started. Many people have failed doing this kind of business, regardless of what kind of business it is, because
mm,
they say, I don't have enough money. I only have 10,000. Let me put it this way. You want to start a piggery. You want to start raising pigs on a commercial level. I
mm,
don't have enough money. I'm going to start with 3 pigs.
mm,
You start with 3 pigs, sometimes even 2, and say, when I get those and then they reproduce, then I'll be able to increase and increase. You will never succeed being a very successful commercial farmer raising pigs if you started with the 2 or 3 pigs.
Mm.
And the reason why, because that is the only amount of money he had to go and buy 3 pigs to start with. If there was a
Mm.
possibility of credit to be successful, start with at least 10 or 20,
Mm.
because that gives you a very good starting point. That is
Mm.
gear number one in your vehicle. And
Mm.
within a short period of time, you're going to see the work, the return from your investment, and then you're going to pay back the loan to the credit union or the bank, wherever you borrowed it, because you will never have enough money to start at that level, which is commercially viable. But starting with the 3 pigs is not commercially viable.
Mm.
And after a few months, you're going to be frustrated because your wife
Thank
needs a new dress, your children need to go to school, and these 3 pigs are not producing enough to give you an income that can sustain your life. You also want to have a beer on a weekend. You can you
you.
find
And
yourself
you've already spent
in
the 10K.
dire poverty,
Mm.
dire poverty until you say, to hell with these bloody little animals. But
Mm.
if you had access to credit, you would start with a number that economically viable. 10 to
Mm.
20 is a good starting point.
Mm.
So credit, whatever business you want to go in, credit is very, very important in a capitalistic society. If you want to be a commercial farmer, some of you, well, let me put this, let me be very blank. These Bademuka are going to be kicked out of Uganda. I know they killed a lot of our people in some of these counties like Bulemezi, Bururi, Singo, you name it. All right. And John comes out of London. He wants to go back to Bururi, and these Badahim have all gone, and he wants to be a good commercial farmer. Now, there is 100 acres of land which he can acquire legally,
Mm.
but how is he going to start utilizing that land? He's not going to do it with that little traditional hoe. He needs a tractor.
Yeah.
He needs to start with some things that he's going to use this land to grow and become a prosperous commercial farmer in Burundi. Now,
Mm.
John, maybe he saved uh, 5,000 pounds, which he has gone to Uganda with. But what is 5,000 pounds going to help him when he has 100 acres or more to deal with in Burundi? He needs a credit line. He's not going to get it from Barclays Bank. Heck no. If we had Bulemezi Farmers Bank, which is an
Mm.
indigenous owned by the people, that bank is going to look at his plan and they are going to say, well, we can give you the loan, and we are going to make sure we are watching and supervising you and giving you assistance so that you can be successful, not a failure. Is that okay? Yes, sir. Sign. Now you
Mm.
can start using that 100 or more acres of land in Bururi, and John is going to become a successful farmer. But if he
Mm.
started with a hoe, he has those many acres, he's not a young man anymore. He's getting older every single day. He's going to reach a point of saying, let me sell some of this land and just remain here with the 10 acres or 5 acres. After all, I have my banana plantation, and I have 2, 3 goats. Ah, and he becomes a peasant farmer.
Mm.
That's not what we expect Johnny to do, having come
Mm.
with big dreams. Credit is vital. You cannot succeed in developing a nation without credit.
Mm.
The white settlers who took over Kenya during the colonial days, they the first thing they did was to establish credit line for every poor white boy that they brought in. By the way, they brought in a lot of boys from prisons and the street boys from England. They were not sophisticated people. They were a bunch of trash whites. But because they respected them as individuals, each one was given a credit. And I have researched and written extensively about what they did in Kenya in the 1900s. And that's how they became successful white settlers in the Rift Valley, in Eldoret, in the Kenya Highlands. They all became, there was no poor white boy there. No, they were all very
Yeah.
successful because of credit line. But that credit comes from money which has been saved by individuals in financial institutions.
And
So
better
when Museveni
nationalized.
built our indigenous banks like Greenland Bank, like Uganda Commercial Bank, like Uganda Cooperative Bank, when he killed those institutions, he killed us by the throat. And we have to rebuild these institutions.
No, I see, senior. Definitely better a nationalized one. So we're going to move on to the next portion, senior. And the next portion does say that people must be free to organize themselves in their community under what is known as adult education. By that we mean people should be able to mobilize and scrutinize their situations. They can look into their socio-economic or working conditions. When individuals put their heads together, they can scrutinize their situations and come up with practical and constructive answers to common or communal problems. I think we have talked about this in the previous section that we just left. We've talked about this also extensively of how this will enable people to come together and organize themselves. Uh, I think we've touched on it enough that we can move on to the next section. And the next section, just for our audience members, now we're going to be entering how do we form labor unions and how do we form cooperatives. Now we're going to talk about these organized groups separately and then look at their advantages, and the show will continue from there. So now we're entering the heart of the show. This first section is about forming a labor union. Employees of the same organizations, for example, railway workers, teachers, nurses, retail traders, can unite to form a labor union through which they can collectively demand from their employers better working conditions and wages or salaries and any other amenities which they deserve. Through a labor union, members practice and develop democratic values and community responsibility by electing their leaders and caring for each other's welfare. Under a federal system of governance, the people are in charge of governing themselves from the village level all the way up to the national level. The collective responsibility at the grassroots level is conveniently reflected through labor unions. Members manage to influence their working conditions for the better, demand and achieve better pay, and improve their lives with dignity.
Yes.
So, Senior, on this part, there's just a few things that I want to pull out for us to talk about. There's this notion of collective responsibility, and I want us to look at that just juxtaposition to also the idea of members self-governing, because for so long we haven't had self-governance. Not only self-governance at a government or institutional level, but also at the individual level, as you had said before when we started this show. When you hear people on TV programs talking about government yatusubiza or tusaba government etuyambe, it doesn't, the way how we're being governed in this unitary doesn't provide for that seed of self-governance where people go, they elect their leaders as members of a certain union. So if you could break down how going through that process enables collective responsibility and how that structure is already provided for in a labor union, and how it will organize the nation's workers to come together, and how that will help within today's topic, which is economic empowerment.
Yes, Desire. One thing you got to remember, the
Mm,
present system dwarfs your mental
that's
capacity to think for yourself.
mm,
Always think, oh, someone is going to do this for me. But that someone doesn't care about you. That someone is not giving a damn about your welfare. They are interested in themselves. You are seeing
mm,
it right now in Uganda as we are celebrating 60 years of independence. Whether your representative is a NUP member or a DP or NRM, you are nothing. They don't care about you. They're interested in themselves and their positions, and they're being called honorable, even when they are the biggest thieves Uganda has ever produced. They are still
mm,
honorables. That's what you call them. Okay? Now, when you develop labor unions,
mm,
looking at that in particular, the power of individual thinking and creativity is, is unlimited. You give the people a chance to sit together and
mm,
figure out what they want for themselves. You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised because they will surprise you. But if you want
mm,
to control people, promote individualism so that people
mm,
can always be, each one is scared of dealing with another person, then you got them by the tail.
mm.
But when you let
Isolate.
people get get together instead of working in isolation, you are going to
Mm,
see a dynamic, growth oriented society because together they can progress. Divided,
mm,
they are failure. Now,
mm,
labor unions are very, very good at developing a community spirit and also
mm,
developing leadership and developing
mm,
creativity and developing um, social interaction because they are working together to solve a common problem or common problems, be it
mm,
teachers, nurses, railway workers, airport workers, you name it, wherever, whatever that brings you together as a people, regardless of your political, cultural, religious, and any other affiliations. But this common problem is going to bring you together and solve it as a team. And also, the employer is
mm,
going to be very sensitive to the community expression, which is
mm,
brought to them as a
mm,
team of employees. For
mm,
but okay, let me say I am working for Nile Brewery, or I think Nile Brewery is still functioning, and I am
mm,
complaining about the working conditions. When I go to the manager and tell him that I am very unhappy, he's going to look at me and say, Kintu, you don't want that job? You can go to hell. I'll find someone else who is going to fill in. And definitely, I can walk out today. They are going to find someone within 2 minutes to come and take over
just,
my job. But if I went to him and I said, look, I am representing my fellow workers. This is our complaint as
mm,
employees of this factory. We do not like being told that we have to show up at 7 o'clock in the morning because I live so way out. That means we have to get up at 5 o'clock, be at work at 7, and you tell us we have to work until 6 o'clock. By the time I get public transport to go back home, it is almost 8 o'clock at night, and I have to get up at 5. No, we don't want these working conditions. Let us have some sane working conditions. That is, say, 9 o'clock in the morning, and we all go home by 5 o'clock. So that gives us time. When I speak as representing my fellow workers, the boss is going to listen. You see, that is the beauty of collective work, collective bargaining. And you can get a lot of successes if you're working as a team in a labor union. Now,
Mm,
labor unions must be, of course, if there is no any other interference, they are going to be very democratic because the members elect who is going to be the leader in their union. And the members
mm,
can change. If Kintu does not do a good job, tomorrow they kick me out. They appoint someone, but I don't lose my job in the factory. I am only
mm,
being removed, being a leader of this labor union, but I'm still an
mm,
employee and I'm still benefiting from,
from the
you know,
labor itself.
whatever the union achieves. And
Mm,
you see, when you look at all that, we are going to learn, or rather, we are going to abandon being individualistic and find value in working as a team and learn how to be, what do you call it, to be a team of employees. And if we
mm,
move from there and we go into politics, we have already developed the skills of community consciousness that we are not going
mm,
to be that kind of stupid people whereby someone comes and gives you a bar of soap and say, vote for me. Because it
mm,
doesn't work. When we are enlightened in this in the civil responsibilities, civil duties, this is a very a good training ground for civil responsibility. We are not going to be that cheap.
mm. Because senior, when you say that, it reminds me of, because when you say there will be that community collective consciousness reestablished, and I thought about some regions in Uganda. I'm like, we have that collective consciousness almost of just our suffering and pain, but we haven't put action towards it in things we have. Sometimes I avoid saying we haven't, because after seeing what happened collectively, us coming together, or Ugandans coming together, the past election. But I think what I wanted to say is what I like about this is it's the established, as you say, the civil one, whereby you're not so cheap, or understanding of your needs, and that when you collectively come together and demand, they can be met, and going with that process, step in and step out, and not always being a lesser of, or having to compromise because you're guarded by the union itself. So the union helps to carry on the needs of the people without feeling individually called out or intimidated, and guarantees that if you have these specific needs, we need few less working hours, it will be met. But also, you mentioned something that I wanted us to speak of a little bit more. You mentioned that an employer will be sensitive to the local area where they're at. Now we're talking about fed, a federal organized state, Uganda being organized as a federal state, and what that responsibility that it gives back to, because people sometimes might miss how power will be given back to them in a federal state. But even that statement that you said in it of itself paints a scenario whereby, for example, if I'm a miner, I can't, if I'm a person with a mining company and I want to go and mine clay, probably somewhere maybe in Ankole or somewhere in Karamoja, I can't just mine without being sensitive to the locals. And because the locals are going to provide the labor, the locals are going to be the ones who are going to stay in that area. Uh, they've been there, I found them there, and even when the company leaves, just how the, I guess what I'm wanted to ask you to highlight a little bit more on, because you brushed up on it. How does the labor union, because you have workers who will be in that area and workers who come from outside that area to work in like certain factories, like we talked about the now brewery, but then how does that keep the labor union how does the labor union keep the employer or these big companies accountable to even the locals who do not work in the company but benefit from the presence of a labor union running that, working or negotiating with that business in place?
Well, let's look at that's a very good point. Let us look at the environmental damage possible. The factory, the labor union, because it is an organized group of workers, some of them, as you say, are from the local area, others are from other distant states like West Nile, Hoima, Bunyoro, Toro, Kigezi, yes. But when they are together as workers, they can be sensitive to the environment. If this factory is doing some crazy things that are dangerous to the environment, this labor union can jump in and say, Mister, we are complaining about the damage that we are causing this environment. The local people here have also complained. They have brought this matter to our attention. We have also seen that this is not fair. They can be, the boss is going to be sensitive to the complaint because they can say, we are going to stop working if you continue polluting this environment. And when they say we are going to stop working, because this is where the issue of calling a strike comes in. We are going to impose a strike on this factory. We are not going to work. And of course, when we say we are not going to work, that means you cannot bring someone else to work when we are on strike, because nobody comes in when we are on strike. We own the right to be the employees in this factory. And if we are on strike, even the police has to enforce our demands that the factory is going to be closed until you clean up your act, period. That is where the power of the workers when they are organized. But you as John or Peter working in this factory, you cannot tell the boss and expect very good results. Because if you are complaining about what here the factory has done to the environment, he's going to say, well, if you don't like the job, you are free to leave.
Quit.
And if you are not quitting, I'm firing you. Because he can fire you and you are gone. You've lost your job, you've lost your source of income, you are now on the street as unemployed. It can't work that way. But when we are organized, there is no way the boss can do that kind of stuff. So teamwork is the key. And then those people are going to see that they have the power and the responsibility to maintain a prosperous economic activity in the neighborhood. And that's one good thing that will come out of that collective work.
And thank you so much for answering that, Senior Chintu. So we're going to go on a very short break. We're almost near the end of our show. The studio number will be on the screen when we do come back from this break. Next, we're going to talk about forming a cooperative when we come back from break. And if you have any questions, any comments, please send them through, and as we will be answering them right after our next segment. We'll go on a short break and we'll be right back for the last half of our show.
Why do we need the federal system of governance in Uganda? And what is federalism? Federal is a system of governance. It's not about getting rid of the central government. It's not about party politics. It's not about multi-partisan or absence of it. It's not about religious differences. It's not about tribalism. It is not for the benefit of Buganda alone. It's not about monarchism. It's not about land or dispossessing people from land. It is not about supremacy of one region over another or others. It's about helping the central government to provide services more efficiently and provide more effective development to the people. It's about sharing power and responsibilities between the central government and regional governments. Federalism is about providing more prosperity, more wealth, more feeling of belonging and participation in governance by marginalized and non-marginalized people. The federal system of government minimizes possibilities of waging war against the central government. It minimizes internal acts of terrorism and discontent against the central government. It has inbuilt safeguards that ensure uniform growth for all regions of the country, and additional measures to make sure that the marginalized or less developed regions of the country can catch up through the system of equalization grants and affirmative action programs. This ensures that the regions with greater income and development contribute a percentage of their earnings to the developed areas which may be less developed. It should be noted that federalism, though different from decentralization, does not contradict or exclude decentralization. The two systems can and should coexist and complement each other at the regional level. Advocating federal does not mean or seek to get rid of decentralization from regional tier. Nor does it mean getting rid of district MPs, LC leaders, or other regional government officials. To learn more about federalism, register and join UFCC at www.ufcc.uk.
Dr. Andrew Takome Kaira was born on 30th January 1945 in a small town known as Nkokonjeru in the Buganda region. He is regarded as one of Uganda's forgotten heroes, a true nationalist whose love for his country sent him to an early grave. He was a lawyer and professor and had many accomplishments since 1971, with many of his accolades attained from his education and political experiences, both nationally and internationally. Significant is his doctoral dissertation titled Condoism in Uganda, which has awarded him an internationally recognized terminology now used in criminology. He joined several political organizations, including Uganda Freedom Movement, UFM, which he was the leader, the Uganda National Liberation Front, UNNF, later joining the National Resistance Army, NRA, which had once been his organization's rival. Dr. Kaira is regarded as one of Uganda's forgotten heroes, a true nationalist whose love for his country led to his premature death. He was just 46 years old when he was assassinated on 6th March 1987 during a dinner with his close friends and 3 female acquaintances. His killers have never been brought to justice.
Oh, sorry, I was muted there. But welcome back to the Tower at UNN. You're here with me, Desire, your host for today's show, and with my co-host, Senior Chintu. Today we're talking about economic empowerment through the building and installment of labor unions and cooperatives, a form and a way that workers can come together, unite, and not only build their economic uh, and build, not only have a foundation for their economic empowerment, but also for it to be a strong pillar to the economic empowerment of the nation or advancement of the nation within a federal system of governance. When we do talk about nation building, and when we mention on these programs that we come here to talk about issues of the nation and how we can actually find a remedy for how our nation has been left exhausted, depleted, exploited, and within a state of course, as Senior Chintu said, imposed poverty. The solutions are there. They lie with so many amongst us, our elders, people who've worked in this field, people with information, who are able to come here, like Senior Chintu has come today, and share this information with us. Let's take this as an opportunity of learning and an opportunity of learning to teach, and also as just a vision synopsis of what is to come. So moving forward, we're going to talk about forming of a cooperative. If you've missed half of this show, we've talked about forming of a labor union. We're going to move forward to talk about cooperative. So this paragraph reads that when people talk about developing the national economy, they make it sound as if something will drop from the sky and land onto their laps. Economic development of a nation implies improving the economic performance of many, if not all, citizens who make up that nation, states, and communities. The starting point at the grassroots level is among the people who are in the same occupation or employees of the same organization or profession. Citizens who share a common bond, for example, fishermen, farmers, taxi drivers, members of the same community, can organize themselves and come together to scrutinize their common problems and come up with practical and relevant solutions which will enable them to collectively improve their economic conditions. Uganda is predominantly an agricultural country. Exploitation of farmers has always been a serious problem. Because of that reason, many districts in Uganda had well-organized coffee and cotton growers cooperative unions. Each cooperative was owned and managed by its members. Neither the state nor the national government should participate in the management or direction of the people's cooperative. So, Senior, on the note of formation of cooperatives, there is an emphasis, and same applies to the labor unions. There is this emphasis of the government being non-participatory of these organizations. For these organizations to predominantly be owned by the members, and the members are always the workers. Uh, how important is that weighted when we look at not only for, you did mention that a democracy needs functioning labor unions and cooperatives, but how does that contribute to strengthening that democratic atmosphere within that nation?
Well, let's put it this way. The role of government is to set regulations or laws which govern these institutions. So much so that nobody can take advantage of them and they walk away with the spoils without maintaining, in other words, without nobody should cheat. The laws which govern do not are not designed to be only good for one individual or one district or one type of association. No, they are uniform. Like we talked about the labor unions, the laws of that the government sets in is an employer cannot say, you guys, you have been complaining too much, you don't like the way I'm running my company, I am firing all of you, the government can come in and say, no, you can't do that. The law says this organization is protected by the law. It has a right to complain. It is there, okay? That is the role of the government. Other than that, running that individual cooperative, individual labor union, that is the work of the members. By the way, let's be honest about it. There is no problem in society which cannot be solved by the people if they come together as a team and try to scrutinize their problem. Now, we say Uganda is an agricultural country. Yes, we are big producers of agricultural products, including harvesting our lakes and rivers. Okay. If the people who are producers come together and they said, we want to see that our coffee is being marketed at a price that gives us the optimum benefit we deserve from our product. That is the starting point for those people to say, let's get together and form a coffee growers cooperative. And the interesting part of it, as we had before, all these foreigners came in and screwed up our country, we had a federal system within the cooperatives. It was the Lango Cotton Growers Cooperative. And by the way, the Lango Cooperative Growers did not include someone from West Nile. No, it was Lango. The Busoga, the Bugishu coffee growers, even though people in Masaka or even in the Mengo district were coffee producers, but they didn't go and interfere or try to be members of the Bugishu cooperative. No, the Bugishu was Bugishu, the Masaka was Masaka, the Lango cooperative for cotton was Lango. I mean, it's simple federal system right there in practice. You could see that they were already practicing federal. Now, when people get together under that federal system in their cooperative, they get together, they form their union, they process their coffee or cotton, they decide, they elect who is going to be their leader. It is not the government bringing any Hakizimana from somewhere and they say it's going to be the manager, as right now it is in other government-controlled institutions. You find that everywhere, everyone who is working there is Biamugisha or Hakizimana or Tinyefunza. There are no Ngobi, there are no Mukasa, there are no Wamala, there is no Okechi. No, it's only them. No, in this situation, the people are going to be in charge of their cooperatives. Then they are going to decide how they are going to process it. When we look at a product like a cotton, the cooperative will own the ginnery, which first processes the cotton to clean out the seeds and leave the fiber by itself and bundle them in balls. Now, what we expect in economic development of our country is that during the colonial days and thereafter, we were exporting the bales of our processed cotton. In other words, the cooperative society in Apache or Oboke or Lida was selling this cotton to the Lint Marketing Board, which was a government institution. The Lint Marketing Board was responsible for selling this cotton to overseas textile manufacturers. And they were selling it at a profit. But beyond the Lint Marketing Board, the farmer in Apache was not getting anything. The farmer in Apache was only getting when he sells it to the cooperative union, and the cooperative union sells it to Lint Marketing Board at a different price. That is where the farmer in Apache was getting some benefits. Beyond that, no. What we are talking about is if 60 years since independence, that cotton shouldn't be sold overseas as cotton bale to textile mills in England or America or Turkey or wherever. No, we should be processing that cotton. Before Museveni came, we were processing 60%, as I said, of our cotton and exporting 40%. We should be aiming at processing 60%, 100% of all our cotton. By the way, if we processed it, and I would probably be an advocate of the farmers' cooperatives to own the textile mills that process the bales of cotton into finished products like yarns or bed sheets and just bale, whereby uh, manufacturers of bed sheets or shirts or towels can buy these and go and make different cotton products. And I can see manufacturers of towels, bed sheets, shirts, curtains, um, female sanitary pads, you name it. All these things which come out of cotton can be manufactured in Uganda, and we have enough market to take care of these products instead of importing these Mivumba clothes from overseas and the other used stuff. As Museveni one day was scorning, he said, "You are wearing clothes that were picked up from people who died somewhere and they come with their diseases." Of course, but when I was growing up, we were not buying these Mivumbas. We were always going to Chotero Kalisizo and have a new shirt tailored for you, or a new pair of pants, a new dress, you name it. Everything we used to wear was brand new. We can go back, but of course, in a different, better style than it was in the 1990s when we were in the 40s when we were young. So this is what we are looking at. There are also other byproducts, by the way. The cotton seeds can be used to manufacture cooking oil. And the residue of the cooking oil can be used to manufacture soap. And the trash out of the cotton cake when they are making cooking oil can be used as cow feed, especially for dairy cattle. The dairy cattle are very good. I remember because I negotiated that with some company in Holland that wanted to take our residue in exchange for giving us machinery to build a brand new factory at Imbiko, which of course failed because of the political instability in the country. Now, I think we are going to rebuild the dairy cattle industry in Uganda when these Banyarwanda are gone. And we are going to be utilizing that. We don't have to export it. So that is where we are looking at. When you are talking about other forms of cooperatives, there are several forms of cooperatives. The fishermen can also form a cooperative instead of pulling onshore and sell their catch to merchants who come on bicycles or motorcycles or pickup trucks and they take those fish to the market in Kampala or Jinja or anywhere else. The fishermen can form a cooperative society, and each fisherman brings in his catch, it is weighed, and he is paid cash for what he has brought in today. The society, the cooperative society, will process the fish, store it in well-prepared facilities, transport it to the market. I believe the fishermen's cooperative could be able to set up marketing outlets in major towns and cities and sell the fish and at a higher price than they would sell if they sold them to the fish merchants who come out on the shore early in the morning. Then the profits will be plowed back to the individual fishermen. In other words, if the fisherman was going to bring, say, 100 tilapia and sell them at $1 each to a fishmonger, he goes home with $100. But if he belonged to a cooperative, the cooperative will give him the $1 per fish. The cooperative will process the fish, clean them, put them in refrigerated trucks, sell them to consumers in Kampala at, say, $5 per tilapia. The cooperative is earning $4 profit. Are you following me? $4
Yes.
profit per. Then at the end of the year, the cooperative will come back to the members and they say, gentlemen, you brought in so many, we sold so many, we have made a profit of $5 million. Okay? Now, this money is going to be distributed to each fisherman according to how much he brought. Now, you're going to find that is a fisherman called Ziwa who had brought in, or who had already made by selling at $1 a piece. He had already made, say, $5,000. Okay? Now they are going to give him a profit, a dividend of, say, $3,000, because this money is going to be distributed among all the 5 million is going to be distributed among all the fishermen. And he's going to come up with, say, $3,000 at the end of the year.
So, Senior, I have a question. Just a clarifying question. So the cooperative breaks even on the profits with the fishermen.
Oh yes, because the cooperative does not have shareholders. What would be shareholders in the cooperative are you, the members, who brought in the fish. Now, if it is a private company owned by Salim Saleh, the private company is going to make this $5 million profit, and he goes home smiling. He has made $5 million in his fishing company. And the poor fisherman never gets anything. But in this case, this profit is brought back to the members, and it is distributed to them according to how much each one brought. The same formula is used with the cotton growers or coffee growers or tobacco or pineapple growers, for that matter. So it is the members who are the shareholders, and they are the ones who get the profits. After the cooperative has taken out their operating expenses, and by the way, don't forget, it is the members who hire who is going to work in their company, the cooperative. It is the members who are going to be supervising how you, the manager or the pickup driver or the store manager in Kampala, where we have outlet, because they are the ones who are going to be supervising or even giving you that employment, that we have hired you to work in our outlet in Kampala. They would have outlets in Kampala, maybe several outlets within the city of Kampala, Masaka, Mbarara, Jinja, you name it, whatever. Okay? So that is how the members. Now, if, as I said, if Ziwa at one time earned 5,000, now at the end of the year is getting his portion out of the profits, he gets another 3,000. His total income in a year is 80,000.
mm,
It's not bad for him to now go home and smile and buy something for his family or even invest in something better. That
mm,
is the beauty of belonging to the producer cooperative.
mm. So, senior, just to make a distinction for our viewers today, the underlying difference between members of a cooperative versus members of a labor union.
Members of cooperatives, well, we have several types of cooperative, but let's look at,
Mm,
stay with the
the-
producer cooperative. Members
mm,
of the producer cooperative or primary producer cooperatives are those who are involved in actual production of a specific agricultural product, such as coffee, cotton, tobacco,
mm,
uh, simsim, uh, ginger, pineapples, fishermen. Those are
mm,
members of a producer cooperative. Members of a labor union are people who work in the same profession or
mm.
same type of occupation, such as nurses, teachers, uh, employee of
Construction workers.
a factory, or employees like airport workers. Those, their product is their labor. The other ones, their
Mm,
product is their profit.
mm,
But the same principles govern all of them. These ones
mm,
are, they, they supply their labor, that's their product. The other ones supply their agricultural product, which could be cotton, uh, coffee, wheat, like in this country, wheat growers, rice growers, pineapple
mm.
growers, you name it, avocado
And
growers,
millet growers, we have a lot of millet as
yeah,
well.
millet growers, yeah, you name it. And by the way,
And
there is a lot of money made out of uh, pepper, piri piri, ginger.
mm,
Spice business is booming in some countries. There is a man who approached me so many years ago. He was from
mm,
Michigan. He was not a big man like McCormick uh, Spice Company. He told me that he was missing Uganda so much. And I said, "What were you missing about Uganda?" He said, "I used to get those small, hot piri piri. You know that we have two types, the small ones
mm,
and the big ones. The big
the
ones
big
are
one.
almost as big as my finger, but the small
Mm,
ones are very tiny. I think they are more grown in Gomba, Butambara area." He said, before the economy of Uganda was screwed up, he used to get a very good supply. And he said they were very good in his factory because he was using them to mix with other whatever to make spices. And he's looking
mm,
forward to going back in business and get those small piripiris from Uganda. So guys who are coming from those areas which grow those things, rest assured there is a market for your product. But of
mm,
course, you can organize yourselves into piripiri growers cooperative and sell them to him not as raw materials, but as
mm,
finished and grinded. Because you can sell those to Egypt, you can sell them to Lebanon, you can sell them to Turkey, you can sell them to India, you can sell them to Pakistan,
mm,
anywhere they need where they need spices. And there are many. All these countries are very much interested in spices, but let us not remain as producers of raw piri
mm,
piri. We can sell them grinded and packaged. Then they can go
mm.
and blend it product. We don't care. At least they'll give us extra dollars for that, as opposed to raw piri piri in big bags.
And Senior, you've kind of hinted on it just right now, but I wanted you to also elaborate to an audience like an example of how a cooperative can set the set the groundwork for industrialization within the nation, and also how this helps also get rid of external quote unquote investors or investment and allows us to industrialize as a nation.
Um, I have become very cynical about the word investors. I call them
No.
international thieves. Those ones you see walking around in Kampala, they are not investors. They are thieves, thieves in khaki pants. So we got to be careful. When we form cooperatives, those
Mm,
international thieves will be automatically eliminated. In the first
mm,
place, they have been able uh, to come and flood the streets of Uganda because it has been convenient for them to team up with this regime of alien imposters who are also thieves. You know, a coyote and a wolf and a hyena, you can find them all sharing the same carcass because they are all scavengers. You know that
mm,
one has a longer nose than the other one has shorter legs than the other one, one has smaller eyes than the other ones, but they're all scavengers. So
mm,
it doesn't matter which one. And they give themselves such a beautiful names. We are investors. Bullshit. They are not
mm,
investors, they are thieves. No, when people organize themselves in these kind of uh, cooperatives we are talking about, then you eliminate room for these international thieves to come because they are coming actually to 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 grab these products, take them home. I mean, look at the example of Lake Victoria fishing. These international thieves are taking our tilapia away from Uganda. They are taking, now, as I said, these international thieves have taken away all our cotton. As I said, we used to process 60% that we used in nighteel and the leather spinning. Now they are taking 100% of everything.
mm,
Cooperatives are going to give us a springboard for industrialization, no doubt about that.
mm,
A good example I can give you is go to Arusha and see what the Bachaga Cooperative Union has done.
mm,
By the way, the people of Arusha are very good at producing coffee. Now they are not selling coffee as raw beans to foreign buyers. They are processing their coffee, they are roasting it, grinding it, and packing it in cans available for a consumer to go. You can buy those cans if you are in Tanzania. You can buy those cans of coffee, take it home, boil a kettle of water, and put that coffee in there, and you have your coffee drink right there, as you would do here in America or in London or anywhere else abroad. That's what the cooperative has done.
mm,
We can reach that level if we did not fall into this trap of having aliens take over our country and bring their, you know, foreign thieves that are now,
mm,
feasting on our sweat and keeping
mm.
us in a poverty we can't get out of.
And the best part about all of this will be all of us as a nation will be able to enjoy these products as homegrown, regardless of from what region or what state would be producing them. But it's coming home to a cup of coffee uh, from a cup of coffee per se from Bugisu State, and you just having that and the advantage that it would give to the separation within the domestic market and the outside of the domestic market, the exportation. So a lot of things that can be done and can help with the nation itself and the attitude around the nation, like the attitude we have around the nation. Because right now, if I ask Ugandans of any Ugandan made product, I can only mention two, and they are even so overpriced for a Ugandan. The sugar, and they're all companies that are owned by Museveni and his family. So we do not have homemade factory products, but this guarantees and sets space for that. That being said, Senior, I want us to
Yes.
continue.
Before
Oh no,
we get into the phase,
mm,
I want to assure Ugandans listening to us there is enough market for any
mm,
product in Uganda today that we don't have to look at Pakistan, Germany, England, America.
mm,
No. If you look at, we have talked about cotton, we have talked about coffee, but there are so many other products which we can produce.
mm,
We have not talked about milk, we have not talked
mm.
about potatoes, we have not talked about
Bananas.
rice, we have not talked about bananas, cassava, you name it.
Mm,
Okay? Vegetables. God
mhm,
knows how many types of vegetables. Tomatoes,
mhm,
carrots, soya bean. All these products can be produced in Uganda. The reason why a good many of them are not being produced is because we do not have organized market for them. If the producers of these products, as last time I spoke about the Kigezi producers of potatoes and the peas, by the way, Kigezi is very good at the peas and the potatoes. If I ask you in Kampala, in Jinja, in Mbale, in Arua, can you go to any place today and find those delicious Kigezi peas or Kigezi potatoes? They are not there. But the Bachiga can produce those if there is an organized system. And if the Bachiga had a cooperative that is looking at marketing their products, you would find those
mm,
wonderful products coming from Kabale into Arua. If we had an organized system, we would have plenty of milk available 24/7 in any town and city in Uganda. But in many places today, if I went there and wanted to get a pint of milk at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they are going to tell me all the milk is gone because some
mm,
milk vendor came in at 8 o'clock in the morning. By 10, it was all finished. The same with fish. If I went to a market today and they would tell me, oh, all the fish is gone, or if it is there, it is what we call okududa. It has started spoiling because it has been sitting there in the sun, in the heat, with the flies visiting it every second, and it's finished. So wait until tomorrow morning when it is still fresh. If we had an organized system of fish owned by the fishermen and marketed by them, I don't want these foreign crooks to come in there or any other greedy character coming in and says, I will take care of them, buying from you and sell them at a profit. No,
no,
let the producers control and gain the maximum out of their sweat.
mm,
If you want to make money somewhere else, go into another type of business, but don't exploit these producers. Now, I did a study when I was in Uganda of building materials. We were going to build a factory that was capable of producing 100,000 bricks a day. 100,000 bricks a day. And we found out that in spite of that high production, I believe Kajansi doesn't produce that many. Out of that production, we shall be able to satisfy 14% of the demand for bricks.
mm,
How about the rest of the demand? Even with this kind of high capacity production, you couldn't satisfy not even 50% of the demand. So that tells you we would have to build about 5 or more such a brick factories within Uganda to satisfy closer to 100% of the demand, of the local demand. The same thing can go for milk production, fish production, potato production, peas, cabbage, carrots, pineapples, you name it. All you need is a new system of governance that is people oriented, not crooks oriented or so-called foreign thief investor oriented. No, we can build a good Uganda whereby you people can benefit. And if we had a time, we could go into how you can eliminate unemployment in Uganda. With this kind of arrangement, you will have zero unemployment in Uganda because there are many, many jobs that are going to be generated in this economic arrangement that our kids don't have to go to Saudi Arabia or Dubai and be slaves to Arabs. No.
And they will all be protected as workers. That's the key part. You know you're going to go work and you're protected as a worker and you will earn from your day's work and you'll never go home without earning from your day's work. It almost eliminates that possibility.
And the earning you get out of there is capable of sustaining you with dignity.
As well, with dignity.
With dignity.
So,
not as
those are very
a pawn.
Exactly, not as a pawn. Those are very key things to take from this presentation today, because it labor unions and cooperatives are for the worker. They're not there to support anyone. That it also builds a nation of workers, and that mentality, because we all work and we all put in our labor, but it centers the nation around the workers, which is very important while building a nation, because the nation will only stand as strong as its labor. So that brings us to our next segment. We're going to be about cooperatives. So we did go over the producers cooperatives, and just to our members in our audience, we're gonna have this show is gonna be in series, and we're gonna talk about all the other cooperatives when time comes and other financial institutions that we can rely on this journey to rebuilding our nation. But we have producer cooperatives, there's consumer cooperatives, credit unions, house cooperatives, cooperative banking, and cooperative insurance. So, Senior, I kindly ask you to go over some of those, just a brief synopsis of what they are and what people can look forward to in our future programs.
Yes, we have done a good job on the producer cooperatives. I don't think I should go back into that. Now you know what a producer cooperative is. A consumer cooperative is basically what you would call a retail store cooperative. In other words, I'm trying to think of, let me say, there is a place, I don't know where, but it could be a neighborhood place like Villa Maria that I know of. Who come from Budu will understand this. Villa Maria, people who live in that area could say, we need to have a retail store which we own at a reasonable price, where we can buy stuff at a reasonable price. They can set up their own shop, a duka, a general store for that matter, whereby they buy stuff from wholesalers or from manufacturers and sell it to themselves. Members buy, and at the end of the year, the profits this store makes are plowed back to the members. Sometimes these consumer stores are in factory-oriented areas like Kasese, whereby all the miners, people working that Kasese mine live. They can have their own consumer cooperative. In isolated neighborhoods, as I said, Villa Maria, a little distance from Nyendo, they would have their own shop there. And the members people who live in that area will probably, chip in and become shareholders. Then they would hire someone to work for their duka. They get stuff from manufacturers or wholesalers, sell them to themselves. Things which they need like soap, cooking oil, you name it. It will be a general store. That is a consumer cooperative. Credit unions are always formed by people who want to pool their savings together and literally call it the people's bank. They form a credit union, they pool their money together, they save their little money on a regular basis. The money accumulates into thousands of shillings or whatever currency they are using. Then they grant to each other loans. Only members can come and borrow from their credit union. And they borrow from their credit union, not based on their worth. Like here, if you go to Barclays Bank to borrow, they are going to ask you, how much do you own? What collateral do you put here? If the collateral is not good enough, they are not going to give you that kind of money you are trying to borrow. But with the credit union, it is not how much you are worth, but what your need is. For example, my children are now going back to school. I need 3,000 shillings. I don't have it, but the kids have to go back to school on Monday. Okay? So I can borrow from my credit union because the need is real. I need 3,000 shillings. They will loan it to me. I'd say 4% interest. And they ask me, how much do you earn in your other business? How much can you afford to pay back on a regular basis on this loan? And then I tell them, look, I can afford to pay $150 shillings per month, or I can afford to pay 70 shillings a month until I finish the 3,000, or maybe 100 shillings a month. Okay, we are going to let you take this money. You are going to pay back 100 shillings per month. You are going to finish this loan plus interest in how many months? 33 months or 34 months. So we expect you to have paid off this money in 34 months. 34 months is how many years? 3 years.
Yes.
Around 3 years. Not a bad deal. You are home free. You can pay back before the 3 years are over. Maybe you belong to another cooperative whereby the cooperative gave out dividends. For example, you're a member of the cotton growers. And within that time, the cotton growers cooperative has given you 20,000 shillings dividend at the end of the year. You say, oh, you know what? I got 20,000 shillings from my cotton growers cooperative. Why don't I pay back this loan? You come back and say, hey guys, I had a balance of say 2,300. I'm paying it right now. Pum! You've cleared your account. You've paid off. That's it. Credit unions are very good especially for poor people, of people who are disadvantaged. And by the way, don't be scared of this regular savings. I remember when I introduced credit union to Uganda in 1962, at our independence time, I was in a place called the Kalisizo, And the rural people were scared because they didn't have a regular income as we teachers had, because we teachers were saving 10 shillings a month, which we could afford. These rural people said, we don't have a regular income like teachers. How can we save money? And one lady from Ninzi, I remember her very, very well because her son was one of my good friends there. She said, we can grow beans in between our banana plantations, and we'll sell the beans to the Indians in Kalisizo, and the proceeds from that sale will be used specifically for our credit union. So they agreed for that. They grew beans. Within 3 months, they were able to bring 6,000 shillings from the beans itself. So they agreed that every now and then, since they don't have a regular income as rural residents of those local villages there in Ninsi, Matare, etc., and other villages nearby there, they said, we are going to be growing beans, sell them, and bring the proceeds. That was the starting point of their rural credit union. I don't know how they are doing right now and how much money they have. If they are still going on, I'm sure they have more than millions of shillings. So that is credit unions. Housing cooperatives, these are cooperatives to do with people who just want to have nice houses for themselves. Now, you all know, many of you people in Uganda, you have saved and saved and saved for years in order to be able to build a nice house for yourself. Sometimes by the time you are ready to build a nice house, your children are all grown up and gone. Now you could have a house with your children still young and live in a decent house if you were able to form a housing cooperative. A housing cooperative, as I said, is formed by people who want to have nice homes for themselves, but they can't afford it to do it as soon as they want the houses. They can form a cooperative, bring together some money, and borrow some as a unit, not as individuals, as a unit, and build these houses. They make one architectural plan, they buy a piece of land, they split it into plots. For example, if you were 100 members, you buy a piece of land whereby you can say each house is going to sit on half an acre. Okay, so buy enough land that can give you 100 pieces of half an acre each. You go and buy building materials from manufacturers or from wholesalers. As you know, what goes in the building, in the housing, you have the building materials like bricks, roof tires, glass, windows, doors. Then you get inside, you have to have beds, you got to have cooking stove, refrigerator, you name it, electric wiring, lamps, all those things. You can buy them directly from manufacturers as a cooperative, because in countries like this, manufacturers are not going to sell to individual buyer. They will say, go to our distributor. But when you are a cooperative, you can go to the manufacturer. Let's take, for example, refrigerators. If I go and buy one from a retail, I may pay $700. But if we go to a manufacturer, we want 100 refrigerators. We'll get them at manufacturer's price, I'd say $350 each. We have saved money. If we buy cooking stoves, we do the same thing. Instead of paying $500 each, we can go to the manufacturer and probably get them at 250, and we want 100 of them. He will sell them to us. So when we bring all these things like building materials, those appliances which we need to have in those houses, we may find that instead of expecting to spend $100,000 per house, we have spent probably $55,000 per house. Then after all the houses have been built, we hire one engineer to do the supervision. We supply the labor. We will chip in our manual labor to help build these houses instead of hiring some guys or Polish guys or here in America, Latino guys to do the construction work and pay them a wage and jack up the cost of our housing. But in this case, we have the engineer. We members supply the labor. We work as the laborers, build these houses. After they have been built, now each one is given keys to each house. We have 100 houses. We are 100 members. Each one walks off with a brand new house, all fully furnished as we wanted it, because we are the ones who determined how it should look like. Okay? That is housing cooperative. Now, cooperative banking. These cooperative banks are generally owned by cooperative societies or cooperative unions. They are not for individuals. The Bugishu Cooperative Union, the Lira Cooperative Union, the Masaka Cooperative Union, etc., will get together and own a cooperative bank, whereby all of these unions put their money instead of putting it in Barclays Bank. And when they want to borrow money for whatever business, whatever they are trying to do in their union, they go to their own bank. Now, as we said, these companies, these cooperatives may want to start processing their coffee, like the example I've given you in Arusha. They can go to their cooperative bank, borrow money, buy the machines from Timbuktu or from Turkey or from Pakistan, build a factory that processes their coffee instead of borrowing from Barclays Bank, where maybe Barclays may not even want them.
And run their business.
Want us to industrialize, but we have our own bank. We can borrow from our own bank as a cooperative and do this industrialization as a cooperative extension of our operations. And all that is for the benefit of the primary producers, the John, Peter, Paul in the villages.
And providing employment for the primary laborers.
Oh yes, you can say that again. You provide employment to your own people. Not the manners coming from nowhere to come and take these jobs. We are the ones who own it, and we are the ones who decide who should work there. Now, if you're stupid enough to let these Hakizmanas take the job, that's your stupidity. You are going to pay for it. But if you are smart enough, as the Desire is, she's not going to let them take those jobs away from us. So the cooperative insurance are also insurance. They are not very popular even here in the developed countries. They used to be, I think they were more in Scandinavia countries than in these much more harder capitalistic countries. But again, they insure, they are owned by members. Those members could be individuals or could be cooperative societies, and they set up an insurance. Mostly they insure property. They insure farm farms, they insure individual lives of people who are involved in farmers mostly, or people who are involved. Well, they have two types. They insure farms, they insure property, and they also insure cooperative merchandise, which is being shipped or transported from one place to another. In the same way as other casualty and property insurance companies do, when you ship stuff, they would ask you, do you want insurance just in case your cargo is lost on sea or in air or stolen or whatever? Yes, you can buy insurance. That's what this cooperative insurance is going to do. But this is going to be insuring property, commercial property, farm property, uh, and also individuals who work on farms or businesses that are part of the cooperative organization.
Senior, we're going into the last bits of our show, kind of like a summary overview of what we've talked about. And we're going to look at now the benefits of a labor union summarized. And here it states improving working conditions, better salary and wages, solving management and labor conflicts, achieving more and better employment benefits, for example, like housing, health insurance, employee pension fund, social security, and all, etc., etc.
Yes, labor unions are good at that. The most important, well, they are all very important. Improving working conditions, we labored much about that. If a factory, I have had this, I think, talking to Prince Chimbugwe about the problem of our people in the Middle East, that they are forced to work from 7 o'clock until 7. Now, if we had a labor union among such a people, they could form a union and they say, no, this is too much. These hours are unhealthy. If I had a factory in Nyendo, Masaka, and I forced my people to work in my factory there from 7 to 7, they would probably complain and say, look, I live in Chamaganda. How long does it take me to catch a ride to reach the town? It takes me an hour. So you want me to be on the road by 6 o'clock so that I can make it to Masaka town at 7. And then when I get out at 7, by the time I get home, it is 8 or 8:30, 9 o'clock. That is nonsense. You can't make people work in those kind of conditions. They, as a labor union, they can come together and put up a fight and say, no, we want better civilized working hours, and they can achieve it. Another thing, they can get together and say, we are being paid, as I gave you an example, $1, a day. We are being paid very little wage. I can't even survive living under that wage. So we want a better wage. And they can negotiate, and probably they put pressure to the employer and they come up with, say, $5 an hour, which is okay. You never know. Many times these labor unions negotiate for salary increase. That is very common. Good working conditions. That is very important. Solving management and labor conflicts. You have been mistreating women employees here. We have had so many cases of where the bosses or some department managers, demanding sex because that's the only way this woman can hold her job in this factory or in this office. That can be negotiated, but that woman alone cannot stand and face the management and win. But if she was with this union, the union can really stand up and say, this mistreatment of women employees is unacceptable, and they can stop it. And I know
And with bigger repercussions.
Exactly. And even it probably brings some of those people to boot. They may end up having a
Mm.
nice little bedroom in Iruzira because they
Yeah.
they have been caught doing this kind of stuff. All right. Achieving more and better benefits. Yes, there are so many benefits the labor union can demand and achieve, namely better housing if the employer provides housing. Look at we spent a lot of time on the way the policemen in Uganda are treated, living in those things that I wouldn't even put pigs in. And yet a policeman is forced to sleep in those kind of shacks. It's incredible, very sickening. But if they were organized, they could put pressure and have those things demolished and the new ones put together. But they are all hanging around as individuals. That's why the boss can really screw them real good because they are not organized. So that is one of the things. Another thing that they can benefit from this kind of organization is they can demand health insurance, they can demand pension. In civilized countries, they are going to tell you that, for example, if you are making $50,000 and they are asking you, they put a pension fund together, you put in $20, the company will put in another $20. So your pension contribution per month is $40. You put in 20, the company puts 20. I mean, I'm using this as an example. The ratios could be different, but the
Different.
company contributes. So
Some
your
go.
pension, by the time you are retiring at the age of 65, you've been there for 30 years, they are going to tell you, oh, you have about $750,000. That is your pension. And they give you a very nice retirement party at the factory or the office where you work. That's wonderful. You go home smiling that you have a retirement fund of 750,000. Not bad, plus your other benefits. Another thing that the labor union can demand is employee life insurance. In many companies where labor is organized, you are going to find that when you join the company, as I said, if your salary was $50,000, the company automatically puts doubles your salary and say your life insurance is going to be 100,000 because your salary is 50. The life policy will be double your salary, and the company pays for it. You don't pay for it. When you quit or you retire, that policy dies. Or if you get fired, supposing you've worked here for 5 years and they fire you for some reason, or you quit, that life insurance policy of 100,000 is dead. You don't go with it because the company was the one paying for it. It is as good as long as you are still working here. Now, if you die while working here, your family is going to get that $100,000 because you have died while the policy is still valid and good.
Yes.
That
Yes.
that is one of the benefits. But you don't find that in companies which don't have unionized workers. You can only get it when you are organized in a labor union. Um, Annual bonus or profit sharing. I think here it is Chrysler Corporation. I'm not too sure. But I heard on the news that Chrysler Corporation set up what they called a profit sharing. In other words, the union, the United Auto Workers Union, demanded it. They said, if we work so hard and we make this company a profitable company, It is profitable because we sweat our butts off for it. So if at the end of the year you tell us that you made $5 billion profit, instead of sending all that money to the stockholders, we too, the employees, need a
Yeah.
share of it. So they set a percentage or a portion that is going to be plowed back to the workers in the factory. That you can only get if you are organized as a labor union. Annual bonus, yes, that's another thing. So, some companies here do it. They will have an annual bonus every year. You hear they say, "Oh, I got in the envelope. I got $70 Christmas bonus." They usually do it around Christmas at the end of the year. Oh, I got $70. I got $200 bonus. Well, you can use it to buy Christmas presents for your children and grandchildren, or girlfriends or boyfriends. You know, those are some of the benefits you can get by belonging to a union, a labor union. Yes.
Yeah. Well, one of the key ones is the working conditions and making sure you're at least getting a salary that gives dignity and makes it able for you to exist in that
Oh yes.
society.
Oh
So a
yes.
union takes care of your everyday life. Because I'm part of unionized work, I find that sometimes I find myself saying my union does more for me than the government does, because it is really a
Yeah.
safe net for you as a worker.
And and Desire, after experiencing that, then this
Mm,
nonsense of individualism, Nasi wa Mukange, evaporates instantly, because you
yeah.
know damn well, you know,
Hmm.
you are leaving the fruits of locking arms with your brothers and sisters. You are now a
Mm,
member of a community. You are now a member of this state. You know,
mm,
the Masaka
uh,
Cooperative Union of Coffee Farmers, you feel we, the Masaka, and I look at my brothers in Imbale, they are also coffee growers. Yes, I don't belong to
mhm.
their union, but we are brothers in
That's not.
spirit. The
Mm,
interrelationship
mhm,
is so
mm,
vivid that you can even touch it. It is just vivid. You can touch it. But right now, if I spoke to that coffee farmers in Masaka, what the hell does he care about someone in Bugishu? We have nothing in
mm,
common. Yeah, I hear they
mm.
also grow coffee. But so what? Okay. If I went to the store and bought fish that has been perfectly cleaned, it has been stored cleanly, it is beautiful, and I see it, it says Sese Fishing Cooperative Society. Hmm, hmm. I'm going to eat fish from my brothers who are also cooperative members in Sese. I've never seen them, and I don't even care seeing them, but I am enjoying what they have done. And I feel that
And there's
comrade exactly.
mm, there's there's also such an uplifting or an uplifting sensation when you know that workers are not being exploited, because no one wants to be a worker who's exploited, and also engaging with consuming a product that is not coming from exploitative work measures, because we workers, everyone has to work and put in their labor. So as you said, receiving that sacket of fish from Sese cooperative fishermen is, it just sends off that comradeship, and the fact that when it sends it over, you can understand it because you're part of a cooperative or a labor union. Once we get workers in Uganda organized, that nation will be able to stand on its foot stronger than before. But before we do that, we're just playing. So, which brings me to our last one for today. We're going to talk about the benefits of a cooperative, and A cooperative has a couple more benefits, and here it reads obtaining maximum gains for producers of similar agricultural products. Uh, and these ones, by the way, we were talking about producer cooperatives. Better storage facilities and marketing for primary products, for example, the example of the fishermen and the preservation methods for fishermen, accumulation of collective savings to create capital, making credit accessible to members who need it for with affordable interest rates, improving management skills and constructive decision making amongst members, laying a solid foundation for a dynamic industrial drive, eliminating the middleman and exploiters of primary producers, creating employment opportunities to a diverse and vast population, lifting up the economic and social status of members. And those are
Well,
some of the few benefits.
yes, those are some of the benefits of belonging to a cooperative. Um,
Mm,
def, One other thing that is not there but implied, I think they are very self-explanatory. One of the things
mm,
is it develops good citizenry spirit.
mm,
Because when people are involved in this kind of activities, they become better citizens. It lays a solid foundation for democratic governance because people are practically involved in decision making, not decision making in terms of whom we're going to kill and whose land we're going to steal, but in how we're going to improve this, how we're going to better this, how we're going to market our products. People are constantly involved in constructive thinking, which is very, very essential to developing a nation. You cannot
mm,
run a nation when all you are thinking about is cursing people, kicking people, telling them I'm going to crush you, this kind of negative, primitive, barbaric mentality some of these guys came with. As Brother Malik said once, he said, "You guys, the only thing you know is how to 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 milk the cow and take out the cow down." and
mm.
of course, I know Brother Malik was upset, but he was right because that's all they, you know, that's, I'm going to go to Nairobi and take over that place in 2 minutes. Well, come on,
What are you talking
what kind
about?
of nonsense is this? Of
Mm,
all things, they had to be thought about and done. That's all you are thinking about. How you're going to kill people, how you're going to take their land, how you're going to steal this. You can't even think of anything better or constructive. This is, if you belong to these cooperatives and they were, doing a good job as I hope they will, that's not the kind of thoughts that come to your brains. And if anybody talks like that, you would all collectively jump up and kick his butt and send
mm,
him where he belongs. So,
mm,
cooperatives, they are going to lay a good foundation for a dynamic industrialization drive. Yes, we have talked extensively about that. They
mm,
can start with their own. We talk about all these things that we are going to do under this arrangement. Do you realize that you're going to turn around and say, you know what? We, the the coffee, the cotton growers, we have started manufacturing cooking oil, but we need either plastic or tin cans in which to put the oil because you're not
mm,
going to tie the banana leaves. No. So what do? We set up a little factory manufacturing cans or plastic bottles in which we're going to put this cooking oil. With the sabuni, soap, if we are going to manufacture soap, you are not going to tie it on a string and sell it to the consumers. You're going to put it in boxes. We need a factory that makes corrugated boxes in which we're
mm,
going to put the bars of soap and they say this box contain 2 dozens or 10 dozens or whatever amount. So you can imagine those industrialization processes coming into play to feed on cotton production. So and then you are going to see transportation business, because those products have to be transported from the Apache factory to Gulu or to Mbale or to Soroti or to Kampala. So there will be some trucks that will be doing precisely that kind of a job. And then the storage, you may probably set up a distribution center. The storage, you will get into sophisticated marketing business without knowing that you are now becoming sophisticated international business people. And before you know it, people in Eastern Congo are going to say, we want that cooking oil from Uganda, which is coming out of Apache in Rango. And you have to sell it. So inter-country marketing plus inter-regional marketing, you're going to see these things spreading automatically. You don't even have to plead for it. It is going to come automatically. And the people are going to be crisscrossing, selling it to Nakuru, going to Goma, going to Bukoba, you name it, and also buying things from Bukoba, bringing them to Uganda, and we are going to be interacting. Okay. Now, other issues you have raised, I don't think we need to go through them one by one. It is important to emphasize accumulating collective savings. This is to do with the credit unions, and making credit available and accessible by members. Right now, I can bet you 75 to 80% of our people in Uganda have no access to credit.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't done an empirical study of it, but I can guess from my head that I'm not too far from the 80% of our people have no access to credit, and therefore they cannot develop economically without credit. That I can bet my $10. But if we had organized credit unions which cater for individuals, not because of what they are worth, but because of what their needs are, we shall change that percentage, that everybody has access to credit when they need it. That's very important. And those are some of the big benefits that we need to look at when we are planning for a new progressive and developing nation.
And Senior Chin, so I'm going to ask you to elaborate on one fact that we did talk about when we did the Luganda portion of the show. It's that idea of how the leadership skills that are going to be attained by our people when they engage in this. Because we always talk about not getting political education or civil political education being killed up, but forget that there's other ways to attain leadership skills. And I remember you gave an example of what happened when Nyerere came into power, and who Nyerere put in positions as leaders to serve the nation because they had acquired the skills from being members of cooperatives for a long period of time.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me on that. Yes, these cooperatives and the labor unions, by the way,
And yeah, because they have stewards.
Yes, they develop leadership skills. You see, some people think that because you have a nose and 2 eyes and lips and 2 ears, you can be a leader. Hell no, it doesn't work that way. You know, you have to develop the skills of leadership, which are very, very complicated, but yet they are not that complicated because it's a practical way of dealing with the people, decision making, management, self-discipline, and giving instructions and sticking to a program of action. All these things you can develop them in leadership, in managing this cooperative. For example, if you were the manager or one of the people involved in managing a cotton growers in Apache, Lango, or a coffee growers in Bugishu or Masaka, you are accustomed to dealing with different kinds of people, handling different complaints, and also sticking to the agenda. In spite of the complaints, we have to process the people's cotton or coffee. And we have to make sure that we do not fail or we do not disappoint them. That always, you always have that in mind. Now, people who do not have skills, if you come to them and complain, they are going to unleash their hooligans to beat you up because you don't talk like that about our so-called whatever they call himself or herself, because they have they have not developed the leadership skills and management skills that you can handle constructive complaints, and you can also identify destructive complaints and put them where they belong and still pursue the agenda of the organization. This is one of the things that I have noticed many of our people who claim to be political leaders do not have the leadership skills. Now, Julius Nyerere, when Tanzania got independence, Tanzania had a much, much lower number of educated Tanzanians than Uganda. We were way ahead than Tanganyika at the time. However, they had very good, strong cooperative union. What Julius Nyerere did was he tapped into those cooperative unions and got some of their leaders. And I remember like Mr. Lusinde, who was manager of the Bukoba Growers Cooperative Union. They brought him to the government. He grabbed Kasanga Tumbo, who was leader in the Railway Workers Union, brought him to the parliament. He grabbed Bomani, who were very heavy in the Cotton Growers Cooperative Union. They used to call it the Lake Province Cooperative Union. They controlled all the cotton grow business in Mwanza, the whole Sukuma land. And by the way, the Sukumas were the same number of people as we had in Buganda. There were 2 million people at independence, and in Buganda we were 2 million people at independence. We were equal, and they controlled all the cotton production in the Sukuma land. It was a big, big union. The way they were managing it is incredible. It is still running up to now. Now, running such a gigantic operation is not a simple job. The Bomani family was heavily involved in managing that cooperative. Nyerere tapped Paul Bomani from there. And I remember I met Paul Bomani when he was manager of that cooperative union. Nyerere made him Minister of Finance. Now, a man who has been running an empire, imagine one cooperative union controlling cotton production in an area like Buganda province, an area of 2 million people who are heavily involved in growing cotton. A very good manager. He brought them in the government. And so on and so forth. Now, then he tapped into labor unions and he tapped into some of the local chiefs. Over there, they don't call them kings, but they were chiefs. And the interesting thing about the Tanzanian chiefs of the time, they were well educated.
Mm.
And I'm emphasizing that. I don't have to tell you the comparison. Chief Chale was made ambassador to India. Chief Ruhumbiza of Ukerewe was made ambassador to England.
Mm.
And these were honestly, solid, well educated, good administrators, public officials who interacted with their people on a daily basis. In
Mm.
some other countries, those so called traditional chiefs, they are hiding in some secret rooms only to be adored as if they are small gods when they appear out through a window. You do not get managers out of such a people. But these ones were well groomed, very well educated. I personally met Chief Chale before he went to India as ambassador. Very fluent in English, very fluent in local customs, as a chief of the Banyamwezi people in Tabora.
Mm.
And he was so articulate, you could really feel the vibration that this man is going to represent his country as a diplomat. And he did. Now, we were not that fortunate. I don't think we could have benefited much out of if we did that in our country, because I know some characters. I'm not understanding them, but yeah, I don't know. And we do that to them. That's their problem. Thank God I'm not one of them. Uh, These, the labor unions and the cooperatives gave Tanzania or Tanganyika a solid foundation of how to administer a new nation. I
Mm.
would put it a step further and say that is why Tanzania's political system has survived up to this now,
Mhm. Mm.
because they started on a solid foundation
Mm.
of
And
democratic governance, good administrative skills,
mm.
etc., etc.
And senior, you mentioned it right now, but you can also see the involvement of the indigenous leaders came at the foundation of Tanzania. Talking about the chiefs as well, participating in the new nation's politics automatically, but also chosen in a certain with the interaction with the cooperative leaders and the labor unions. It brought all the pieces in a sort of one solidified form to make that foundation.
Yes,
But
they were all looking at building Tanganyika at the time.
mm,
They were not in terms of what is there for me, what
yeah,
am I going
you got
to take,
what am I going to
you know,
gain?
yeah,
Mm,
what am and like Michael Kintu said, "Ebyaffe twabifuna." All they wanted is how am I going to protect my position and how much am I going to
mm,
get for myself? They were not looking at the nation as such.
mm,
The Tanganyika ones, they were looking at a new nation called Tanganyika. We
mm,
were looking at what am I going to eat? What am I going to get? Well, you've heard of people complain. You did not give him respect to call him his title. You did not. Come on, we didn't have come here to worship. I've already finished worshiping my God today in the church. I don't need to come and worship
yeah,
some bloody who was born by who. You know,
mm,
you got to worship them. You have to kneel before them. You got to throw your kalevu on the ground. I mean, come on.
mm,
This is
mm,
nonsense. This is no way to build a nation. And those of you
mm,
who think that, I think you're on the wrong track. We are here to
mm.
build a nation, but not to worship anybody.
Yeah, feed people's egos. And a good thing about today's program, the installation of people being able or people being placed, first of all, being people oriented and people being placed in a position where they have resolved their problems so that no leader can ever come tell people bino mubindekere, because it's also very problematic language. because then what will happen afterwards?
Well,
But
when someone comes up with that kind of mentality, you know he has reached the ceiling of his capacity to think.
not the
He cannot
ceiling.
climb any higher.
Makes sense. But we're going to be going into our callers. We have a couple, and for our first caller, senior, this is Mayembe from Kayunga. So we're gonna listen to Mayembe, and then we will do like we usually do.
Tusanyuse nnyo balaba era mwebala okuweereza program mukyala Desire mwami Chintu mwebala okujja. Ebigambo byonna nga bwe tubiwulira wano tewali kitasoboka. Eno ensi yaffe ngagga nnyo ate ng'erina abantu abakozi abasobola okukola within 2 years abantu nga bali bulungi. Naye obuzibu bwe tulina eka wano e Uganda nti abafuga ensi tebaagaliza bannansi kubeera bulungi. Tewali kintu kikolebwa wano oba kivaayo nga kya gavumenti nga kyagaliza bannayuganda. Wano weewuunya nnyo okubeera nti gavumenti yeekwata ssente neewa abantu mbu bejje mu bwavu. Nedda tekisoboka. Okuleka nga abatufuga tebasoma economics oba nga tebamanyi na planning. Oteekawo buteesi mirimu bantu ne muvaamu ssente ezisobola okukulaakulanya abantu oba abantu ne beekulaakulanya. Bannayuganda abantu tuli bakozi, nze bwe mandaba abantu banyigiriziddwa okutuuka ku kisenge niyo olaba abantu nga bafa abiina okulaba nti basomesa abaana bafuna kye balya. Ekyo nno si kintu kya kuzannya, kizibu nnyo kisanga mu mawanga amalala nga Tanzania. Tanzania abantu banafu era Magufuli wano ijjojjo ndooza yalinga yayambako Tanzania, Abatanzania bokba nti bavaayo nabo ni banafu nnyo na buli kati saawa zino. So bwokempe yalinga bannayuganda n'Abatanzania olabira nga bannayuganda tuli like I think tuli blessed. So bintu bingi bitusobola okwekolera singa tuba tuweereddwa emirembe mwami Kintu nga bw'ayogedde n'enkola ontuufu obutale bw'ebintu. Osanga gavumenti wano yennyini yeegozoobanya ebintu ne weebuuza kubanga bw'ogamba abantu balime bakole agriculture wano nga tokoze makubo bagenda kuyisaawo ebintu bibalima. Bw'ogamba abantu balime ebintu nga gwe wennyini ate obutale weefuula gwe wennyini gwagula ebintu tokkiriza abantu kwenoonyeza. Wano ntunuulira Abasoga wano bagenda ne balima ebikajjo. Mu butuufu bw'ebigambo nga ebikajjo biri ku mitwalo 24 gavumenti neteekawo etteeka n'ebikajjo birina kugulwa nusu 600. Kakati mazima ddala bano abantu tubatwalire mu bitiiki. Abantu ne balima vanilla ne batema ebitooke. Gavumenti nereeta etteeka negamba vanilla World Market vanilla nga 15,000 wano nga bamugula 18,000. Tiwe bane tuli ku ki? Gavumenti ntemu ng'eno onoolemesa ne bannansi okubaako kye beekolera. Aye n'ovaayo n'obagamba mbu simaya mbaagala nnyo, simaya tukulaakulanye ensi, mbu mwagala ensi yammwe, mwe basajja mmwe mwava ku nsi, mwava wa. So wano nze wema ntunuulira ensi eno emyaka 2 gyokka gitumala abantu sinira emyaka 2 gyonna. Omwaka gumu wano nga batemagana nga mukene. Wano nga batemagana abantu wano tuli bakozi abantu basobola okukola ekiro n'emisono okulaba nti tuvaayo. Federal eno yayina okutujja mu bintu bino byonna kubanga federal it's a competition of states. Bwe tunaazimba eddwaliro eddungi ab'Ebunyoro nga balyegomba oba Abebunyoro banaazimba oluguudo olulungi naffe e Buganda nga tulwegomba nga zaabika emipiira nga tewali anenyeza munne. Ensi bwetyo bwekulaakulana competition. Kati n'ali mu Buganda nga Munyoro agamba kanzireyo ewaffe ssente nziteeke ewaffe. Kwegamba mu federo ebintu byekola byokka na byokka. Ali mu Buganda nga Mukalamojja yagamba ewaffe wonooneka bwonoonezi kanzire ewaffe nange essente zigende zikole ewaffe. Ogenda okulaba ne Kalamojja nga wakula nga tewali asindise bintu bino nti kamba forcing mugende nedda. omuntu akwata bukwasi ssente ze ng'ali mu Kampala nga mwakolera n'agenda ateeka horosero Kalamujja oba tebakajja Kampala kuleeta buli muntu ajje omuntu omu y'abajja n'abatwalira ebintu so twandikuze bulungi naye abatufuga ensonga endala gye njagala okwogerako wano ya independence newankubadde nga toyogeddwako nze ntunuulira nnyo oba netegereza nnyo ebintu bya independence bino butuufu nze era olukiiko lwa UFCC luno nsaba nnyo n'ebintu ebimu byogerweko bino ebintu bino ebya independence birina okuggibwa ku maapu okutandika okuddamu okukuzibwa mu Uganda kubanga bya kisiru nze ndaba nga bya kisiru tukuzaaki mazima ddala tukuzaaki kiki kye tukuza omusajja azze n'akuwambako essaati yo oba ekibanja kyo n'olwana n'okimuggyako n'olifuula tteeka mbu buli mwaka nina okujaguza engeri najjamu ekibanja kyange kyokka nga n'ekibanja kikulemye okulimamu emmere abaana bo enjala ebatta mu kifo ky'okulima emmere abaana bo balye kyokka ate ogenda wooli yali abbye ekibanja kyo gy'ogenda okwewola Uganda saawa zino bweri tuwoza independence naye nga independence twalimu n'okulima emmere ewaka teriiwo kyokka obwavu butuluma ate Museveni addukira mu baali bagundi abakoloni abaali bawamba ensi ate jaddukira kati tulina njawulo ki ku mulembe guli naguno omuntu olala asobola okugamba nti abakoloni bakomewo kuba tetulina njawulo ekibanja twakinunula ye Uganda naye abaana baffe enjala ebaluma tulemeddwa okulima emmere gavumenti eremeddwa okulabirira abantu kati ekibanja okinunula ku ki tulaba nti tolina mugaso gwa kununula kibanja ekyo kyewanunula kubanga abaana mu kifo ky'okubagulira emmere n'obawa oli yali akiwambye gy'oyagala okujja obuyambi saawa zino batubanja buli muntu alina okusasula miliyoni emu n'emitwalo 8 mu Uganda n'otunuulira emitwe gyaffe bannaye tukanula amaaso kyova olabanga nayagala buli bino ebintu by'okujaguza ebintu ebitaliiwo bino ye yali abigobye nga gamba toddamu kubyogera wano Uganda ensi twaginunula tujaguza biki ebyo tujaguza omuntu obadde olwanira ekintu kyokifunye ate mbusimanya ntandika okujjago sente z'eggwanga zezibonaabonerawo naye bajja kugamba nti amenulo gamazeewo obuwumbi 5 omukolo gwa amenulo gamazeewo obuwumbi 1000 tulina okufuna abakulembeze abalumirirwa ensi si bano bannakijangajja kubanga bwoba otunuulira ennyo tetulina nnyo kyetufuna mu bintu bino abakoloni bakomewo olwo professor omuwono yagenda n'ayogera wano n'agamba nti abakoloni bagenze naye bajja kudda mu ngeri ba investor si bwekiri kati tekiriiwo bwekiri luli omukoloni yali wano omuzungu nga ettaka ebyobugagga nga babibba nga babitwala nga batukakabukasa okulinnya amaato gaabwe tugende tubakolere nga batutta naye kati saawa zino ennyonyi tuzirinnya tweyagalidde ne tugenda mu Buwalabu okwera enguudo n'okukola mu gundi twandibikoze naye nga batuyisa bulungi tuteeka n'okututta kati ekitegeeza nti byagenda colonialism yasiikibwako akazigo n'asigalawo era bantuulira Museveni ono ng'avuma abazungu ntutuulira bwenti naye omusajja ono oba ategeera bulungi simanyi so ebigambo byange bebimu balina okuweereza bannange tujjumbire okukola associations ensi yaffe eddewo etinte amiina
webale thank you Mayembe okutukubira and calling us on the show today. I'll go ahead and yield the floor to Senior Chintu to say any further notes.
Mayembe has done a good job to tell us about the problem of Uganda. He has summed it up in a way that is very eloquent in Uganda, that the problem of Uganda is the government, or the way Uganda is being governed. He is saying that the so-called regime we have now has contributed a lot to our suffering. And that's what we call in this program imposed poverty. This poverty is imposed by the government, by the structure of governance, by this unitary structure, which is very detrimental to our progress. Now, as we have been advocating in this program, that people get together, scrutinize their problem, and they come up with a practical, a constructive solution. If this Mayembe's analysis is what everybody in Uganda agrees with, then they have already analyzed, scrutinized their problem. Now it is upon them to come up with a constructive solution. And if I am right in thinking of ahead of them, their constructive solution is going to be getting rid of this government. Then go
Has to
do it.
be.
And when you do not allow Uganda to go back to the same rotten system of unitary structure, which is going to bring you back into the same mess that we are
Yes.
in. Now, the second portion of his analysis is that we got independence from the Muzungu, and then we turn around and they come to Muzungu begging and borrowing from them. Well, this is what we have been talking about. We have to own our own financial institutions. We have to set up our own financial institutions, and see, because of our situation we are in now, we have to go through the communal approach, be it organizing and how we sell our labor as laborers, or how we save and sell our agricultural cooperative products as cooperatives, and how where we save our money, where we borrow money, that all these institutions are in our hands. If we did that, then we don't have to kiss anybody's behind, whether it is the Muzungu in Europe or Muzungu in America. We don't have to. We have a clear example of what happened in Latin America 10, 15 years ago, when Hugo Chavez said, why do we have to kiss the behind of the Americans when we can set up our own development bank instead of going to Washington, D.C. to borrow from the Inter-American Development Bank, which is owned by the United States? So he called upon his own fellow countries like Guatemala, Honduras, Brazil. He was, of course, in Venezuela, Nicaragua, you name it. And a few of them agreed. And they put together a few millions of dollars. He put in more from Venezuela. And they started their own Latin American Development Bank. So they have to come to the Inter-American Development Bank or the so-called World Bank or IMF. No. And of course, you know what happened? The Muzungu hated him like hell, and they made sure he's dead. And they poisoned him and he died. But when they poisoned him, he may have physically died as Hugo Chavez, but the idea didn't die. It has not died. Now they are wasting their time to kill anybody because that idea has a life of its own.
Yeah. That's the irony. You can never kill an idea.
You cannot kill an idea. When an idea is good, the first victim of that killing should have been Christianity. When they killed Jesus, they thought, oh, everything is gone. Look at it now. Started with the 12 guys there who didn't even go to Makerere University at that time. I don't think Peter, Paul, and except Paul was well educated, and Matthias was also educated, but the rest were a bunch of primitive fishermen. But the idea has multiplied up to this very day. Okay, so Nayembe's advice is well taken. The first portion of your complaint, now you know the problem, now go find a solution. And the solution, obviously, get rid of this government. Get rid of this. And then the second portion, have a leadership that is founded on principles that are pro your people. And once you have that, then you are going to set up financial, commercial, financial, commercial, banking institutions which are owned by your own people, that you don't have to go to Muzungu to borrow. You can borrow from your own financial institutions. Keep your money in these institutions. I recall one time many years ago, I had a problem with my airline ticket, and this was Kenya Airways. They agreed to refund me some money. And they did. This is Kenya Airways. I got the check mailed to me. The check was drawn on Kenya Airways account at Citibank in New York. Why do they keep their bloody money in New York? That Kenya Airways should have all their accounts in a bank in Nairobi. And by the way, if they have an account at Citibank in New York, they don't have $10 on there. No, they have thousands. And who is benefiting from that money? It is the American economy, which is plowing that money by making it available for American borrowers to expand the American economy at the expense of the Kenyan economy. If that money was left in a commercial bank in Nairobi, it would be the Kenyans who are using it to borrow and expand their production and expand their GNP and growing the Kenya economy. That is the thing I'm willing to die for. Do not allow your money to be put in Muzungu's banks.
You will never reap its benefits.
It's worse than prostituting yourself. Thank you very much, Mayembe.
And then, Senior, for our next one, we have our caller. This is Rodney from West Nile State.
Good morning, UNN. Madam Desire, thanks for the show, together with our elder, Mr. Kintu. Thanks for teaching us the economics, and thanks for the good work always. So back on the topic, in Uganda, everything is upside down. They started with the NADS, it didn't work out. Then Emyoga, it didn't work out. Now they're heading for the parish model, of which we saw the money which was used for planning alone is more than the money which is going to be invested in the whole project, that Emyoga. So it is more of giving a street kid a golden watch. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. But that is Uganda. Everything is upside down. Even if you look at mostly saving, people have been trying to save their money, but people are squeezed. You find the basic needs, they are quite expensive. Everything is expensive. So you find since COVID came, everything was brought down. So those who are trying so hard to revamp and to progress, there is no way, there is no system in place. So that is how things are in Uganda. And those who are working like in loans, giving out loans, if you move around the country, they are all the same people, as if they come from one family. So they are all the Batusi and the Bahima. They are the ones. And their aim is not that Ugandans could get that money and develop themselves. It is targeting at confiscating people's properties, be it land, be it houses, everything. You spoke about labor union. Labor union, it is a very good thing because I participated in it, and it was of great significance to me personally. By then I was working at African. Before it wasn't there, they could fire anyone anyhow, but when the labor union was brought in, it helped a lot, though the bosses were not comfortable with it. But to a wider range, it helped. We became comfortable with our jobs. And BMK, he was a good person. So we were comfortable. If any staff could have any issue, before the management could do anything, they used to consult. Then the labor union could come in, and in case maybe they want to fire someone, you have to present it was clear. The company, at least you will have maybe committed anything, or you will have gone on suspension 4 times. Then they could, but with all the reasons laid out, so it wasn't easy for the company to fire an employee. And the welfare, to some extent, it was great. So for me, I support it because we benefited.
Thank you so much, Rodney, for that insight and for sending this message to us today. I'll leave the floor to you, Senior Chintu.
Well, I appreciate your comments. You have done a good job. As I said with the Mayembe, once you have scrutinized the problem, that is halfway done. You still have a job to do. Now scrutinize the solution to your problem. It is no point talking about a problem without offering a solution. If whatever solution you come up with, find a way of how it can be implemented. And I strongly believe that once you put 2, 3, 4, 5 people together, they can come up with a constructive solution. It is upon you as an individual, plus those that you interact with, to look into the national or local problem, whatever the constituency you are in, and come up with a solution and implement it. And then come back and say, hey guys, I have put together this solution. We need your cooperation. We shall chip in. But we are not, we are so far away and we're all scattered. We need a vehicle through which we can implement a solution. We have already introduced the FCC. We urge everybody to come and listen to our broadcast, which we do almost every day. Learn something, go back and apply it. It is that simple. It is that simple. But complaining, you can go on and complain for the next 100 years. you're not going to get anywhere. When people decided to set up this UNN, they figured that there was a need for dissemination of accurate information because there was a vacuum. There was no dissemination of accurate information. They came together, I think it was 1 or 2 people who said, to hell with this, we're going to do it. And before you know it, they have more than 10 people now seriously and religiously contributing their time and labor to make this thing work. That's what we are expecting out of you people who are listening to us. There is nothing that is going to come out of the blue sky and land on your lap. No. Take a lead, start something, and see it grow. I bet you it is going to grow.
And then this brings us to our last caller for today. This is from Moses from the US.
Chintu, Madam Desire, bebaza okuba omusomo gwo gwe mututeereddewo naddala ogwa development corporation oba associations nga muyita mu bibiina eby'obwegassi okusomesa abantu engeri gye basobola okuyitamu mu bibiina eby'obwegassi okweteerawo their economic progress. Okulumira Gymnasius Kintu okuwuliriza ebbanga ddene nnyo mu pulogulaamu zino nga oli musajja asomesa ku bikwatagana n'ebyenkulaakulana mu financial institutions. Okulimigias ensonga ya UFCC naddala nga etandise okuba nti project batandika okulaba nti UFCC etambula etya okutambuza activities okutuusa ku bantu. Nandisabye ku Limigias Kintu obeere mpagirwagga kubanga mu community eno gye tuli ez'enjawulo mu states mwe tuli n'ensi mwe tuli bannayuganda balina kyetwandiyise nti ebibiina byabwe mwe bali nga bannayuganda buli wonna wonna mu states ez'enjawulo mu nsi ez'enjawulo naye babulamu kintu eki nze kye ndabye mu bannayuganda bino tebabitegeera bino byonyumya nti ate bye bisobola okubafuula abagagga kubanga akasente ke bakola akatono bannayuganda tebamanyi wa kukateeka. So mukulu Limigias Kintu nga mu kusomesa enkola eya federo ngo ejja kubuna nga mukulu Limigias otuyambyeko abantu bano mu bibiina byabwe ne bagezaako ne bayita abantu nga okujja mu bibiina byabwe okubasomesa engeri association zino gye bazizimbamu ze balimu mu communities ez'enjawulo mu development projects kubanga ekyo abantu abamu wano mu America wonna bo balowooza nti association ze bakola bo mu kundi ezaabwe za kunywa bbiya na mwenge na kwegwana na kugira nti kundi nkulabyawo oli oti oli wakabi bo bamanyi nti biba byakwemanya. So mukulu Limigias Kintu bannayuganda bakwetaaga mu nsonga eno okubasomesa basobola abasinga obutasobola kufuna time ejja wano naye nga bannayuganda mu nsi yonna gye bali beetaaga abantu nga mmwe okugenda mu association zaabwe nga bakuŋŋaanye okubateerawo topic neebaya 2 hours oba 1 hour okubasomesa ebintu bino era n'okubalaga nti ebintu bino bigenda kukola ewammwe cooperative zino nga muzitandiseewo e Uganda zijja kukola bulungi nnyo nga tuli mu federal system of government era babe bawagizi ba federo era bwe banaalaba kintu kino nga kigenda okubataasa kigenda kubawa entegeka zaabwe ez'omu maaso bajja kwegatta ku mugendo gwa federo na uganda mu mawanga yonna gye bali. UFCC njagala mu biseera ebijja eteekewo ttiimu egendanga okusomesa abantu ku bibiina by'obwegassi n'engeri gye biyambamu n'engeri gye babuildingamu structures za association mu community gye bali bannayuganda gye baliivinga, engeri gye ziyinza okubakulaakulanyamu, engeri gye bayinza okuzimbamu obulamu bwabwe back home mu kasente akatono ke bafuna ku mawanga yonna gye bali. Mu butuufu kino bwe kinaakolebwa abo bwennyini abantu bagenda kuteekangamu ssente bayite ng'omuntu ajja abasomese, era abantu bagenda kutandika okuwuliriza nga omulamwa gwa UFCC naddala ku nsonga ey'obwegassi eteekawo embeera ey'okwekulaakulanya mu nsi gye tuli n'awaka.
Thank you so much for your message. I give the floor to you, Chintu.
Well, thank you for your wonderful message. This gentleman called and was talking about how important it is to teach our people the values of uniting in both cooperatives and labor unions. And he also emphasized that people do not understand these things because they have not learned about them. He is also recommending that we should go around, whether we are invited or not, but go around and teach people the virtues of organizing ourselves in this style. First of all, I want to say that none of these things can work under this regime, which is dominated by aliens. You just can't. Even if you tried, it is not going to work. They will not let you do it because these are a bunch of thieves and murderers. They are not going to let you do it. Two, we do not have the capacity to travel around the world teaching people, but we have the benefit of modern communication. These broadcasts are on YouTube and other channels, and I believe, I am not sure, they are there permanently. What I recommend is those people who have not been able to listen to us live, encourage them to go into the archives and listen to these broadcasts. These are free lessons. You don't have to walk out of your living room. And everybody with the computer and the internet has access to this information. It is there. Go on UNN broadcast of whichever day, pull it out, listen to it, learn, and the numbers are there. If there is something you want to ask as a question, call that number. You can even call the studio number and say, I want to speak to Mr. Kintu because there is something I did not understand. And you will have, it will be possible to get clarity of what you did not understand. Nevertheless, you have this information available to anybody, anywhere on this planet Earth, as long as you have internet. So there is no need for traveling around giving lectures as some people would want us to do, because we don't have the money and we don't have the time, and it is cumbersome. I'm a practical person. I don't, I don't bullshit about anything. I'm practical. Let's get the job done. And I strongly encourage, if you can analyze a problem, come up with a solution. Give them to us together, twins. Problem, solution, problem, solution. If you have not found a solution, take more time until you come up with one and bring them to us. Join. We want twin issues. Problem, solution, problem. But I mean, we can waste hours and days talking about problems, and they are not going to change anything until we come up with a solution. We
And
all know this.
and
Why don't you waste your time or not waste, invest your energy in thinking out a solution. Invest energy in thinking out a solution, not analyzing a problem. We all know the problem. Some of you have said it clear that they started this, they started that, now they went to parish model there, now Mwenamugagawale, and when you look around, who are rich? Well, you saw them not too long ago when they said they want to raise money to buy an aeroplane for the widow. Did you hear anyone saying $1,000? Hell no. They were talking in terms of 300 million, 400 million, 500 million. I think the smallest was 200 million. Who are now rich that can come up with 200 million? By the way, these are donations. Like if you ask me today, I can give you $20. And you know damn well, if I give you $20, it means I have more than that in my pocket left. So if someone can give you 300 million, do you think he had 320 and gave you 300 million and left with 20 million? Hell no. He had trillions. The 300 he came up with is just a small portion of what he owns. Those are the ones who got rich, get rich programs. It's not you. It's not me. Ladies and gentlemen, invest your time in finding a solution. And when you find it, implement it at any cost. And there will be no apologies to make.
And also, if I might say something a little bit small, Ugandans, especially us who are fighting to liberate our nation, we don't have an infinity source of resources. So we must be strategic about our resources. Because part of his voice note also talked about people would put in money to. Why would you pay for programs that have already been done for free? Let's get out of that mentality that we've been put in for so long that your leaders have to come on tour. No, what Senior Chintu has said, this whole program is about you self-organizing and building a leadership rank, and it being a democratic process that will collaborate with other Ugandans. That's what UFCC is about, bringing all these people underneath one umbrella. Don't expect Desire and Senior Chintu on a flight to go to Amsterdam, to talk to people in Amsterdam, charging everyone to come get a lesson. We've already done the job here for free. It's on it's on here, it's in the archive. So let's be mindful of how we use our resources, because our resources are meant to liberate our nation. Let's not be gustful with them as we're always encouraged to be. But with that being said, we've reached the end of our program today, and I would like to invite you. I'm sorry for all those that we've not been able to listen to your messages or your replies, but we do take time to listen to them. Sometimes on the next show, they do carry over, and or sometimes we listen to them as well when we're off air. And if there's any questions, any unanswered things, as Senior Shinto said, if you things are also unclear, we're semi-accessible. You can always get a reply through the studio number. Don't hesitate. But it is the end of our show. We apologize if we haven't been able to listen to your message. But if it's still lingering, reach through the studio number. And at this point, Senior, thank you for being here. And I'd like to invite you for your closing statement.
Thank you very much, Desire. Ladies and gentlemen who have been watching us on this historical day, it is now 60 years since Uganda became independent from the British, and then unfortunately became colonized by the Tutsis in 1986. It is very unfortunate, but we should not lose heart. Never. This job is not done. We still have a lot of work to do. We need to reach a day when we shall honestly and truly celebrate Uganda's independence in freedom, liberty, and dignity as Ugandan citizens. By Ugandan citizens, of course, you know what I'm talking about. That Uganda, which is not under the domination of alien imposters. I want to wish you a wonderful day, a wonderful evening, and please keep your spirit high, because it is only through your constructive thinking and action, not only thinking, but action, that Uganda can truly be a new sovereign, independent country under the leadership of indigenous Ugandans. Thank you very much for your time, and God bless you. God bless Uganda, and God save us from the Tutsi domination.
Thank you so much, Senior Chintu, for being here with us, bringing this information, breaking it down for us, explaining what explaining needed to be, and also compiling and really reigniting and showing us, coming to the table and sharing the knowledge that you have. I also would like to say thank you to everyone who's been with us from where we started. If you're listening to us or you've been watching us, and also people who come back regularly, not only to our shows, but also to all the different shows on UNN. Let us engage with them actively, proactively, take it upon yourself. There's been many steps that have been introduced of how you can involve yourself in the work that we need to do to liberate our nation from the dominance that exists. But with that being said, we all can see it clear as daylight. We all know what we need to do to liberate ourselves, all means necessary. So I want to wish you all a good rest of your evening, a good afternoon, or a good morning from wherever you're watching us. And until we meet again, that will be probably on a Thursday show or a Sunday show. But until we meet again, akume atakumira mpera.
musukula kalabika kungulu ndagate magana gamunda mujute amagumba g'abafu sibalimbaye sibalimbye
sirina bigambo eri abatwavu wasa mwegulumiza nnyo
bali bakakanya bemukakanyiza
baligulumizibwa
emirundi abiri
okukira mmwe
ziramu okukira mmwe
nanfuusi ziribasinga bulituka mutyo
musango gwagenda
mwegulumiza
nnyo bali bakakanya bemukakanyiza baligulumizibwa obanga nimba wabewajja ngambe jampakanyiza eri ababavu wadde ababyega ebyammwe n'ebintu ebirala banyama abakwatiddwa n'abasiriddwa takumira mpeera tulina eŋŋombo nti yazaala ekibi akiwongerera tulina eŋŋombo zaala ekibi akiwongerera